Hello there, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Rambling Live. I'm your host, Cast79, aka Christo, my usual co-host, Derek, aka Dark Neon.
The beginning is a very delicate thing. Know then that it is year 1981.
Yeah, and we're joined by my usual guest and fellow film friend and fan, Werewolf River, aka Ian.
We'll wipe out all the Fremen who try to attack us. Then we'll kill Paul Atreides and take over Arrakis. Spice flows. The spice flows. You'll get the joke later.
Yeah, I believe that's the song where they put in the "If you walk without the rhythm, or you'll attract the worm" line.
Yeah, I think so. But
But yeah.
I mean, specifically, it was a joke about Austin Butler, who
Oh,
also played.
Elvis,
Yeah.
yes, that's
Sorry.
perfect, man. So yes, yeah. So judging by that jaunty tune and what that wallpaper and everything is, we're here to talk about a very recent release that has become that caught the internet quite by storm with its quality and how everybody talks about this will be one to remember. So of course we're talking about
Yes, we're talking about Madam Web.
Of course, Madam Web. What else?
yeah, that movie apparently was so bad everyone's made a video about it.
It's fine. 4 out of 10.
Well, yeah, he
Anyways, moving on to that.
of the three of us, Eric's the only one who actually went to go see it. But like I said, though, that one caused quite a stir with the hell where people even saying they're not reviewing it was considered a statement to be bashing on somebody. But other than that, we went from a movie that was so like, why was this out? That you
To be fair, when I went to see it, I actually had the prospect of going to see T2 being put on the big screen in 4K theatrical cut, but that's another thing.
I guess seeing those two close together helped make you say like, yeah, like it's fine, it's passable. But yeah, like we went from a movie that was so disposable to a movie that people are saying is invaluable. I mean, some might say it's a little overhyped. Others are saying it misses the mark. But for the most part, I'm just seeing unanimously across the board that this movie is definitely one for the ages for some people. That would be, of course, Dune Part 2, the follow-up to Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 1 that was released 3 years ago at this point almost.
It came out
Yeah.
like around 2021.
Yeah, it was an
Yeah.
HBO Max release at the time too. But I remember that everybody was all like, "Make sure you see Dune 2 enough so that Warner Brothers will be encouraged to make the next part." Because I remember that there was a version of Dune Part 1 where I don't think they put the Part 1 until up to release because they were just calling it Dune, just Dune. Like who knows? They said we might get a chance to make another one, and then Dune. Once it got enough, they got enough traction to know they started calling it Part 1, and we go, oh, so and then they said this was happening. So, of course, Dune is the seminal novel of science fiction. Some people compare it to sci-fi, what Lord of the Rings is to fantasy, and it's also been considered a book that people have been trying to adapt for a very long time. I mean, one of the most famous examples is Alejandro Jodorowsky's Dune, which was going to happen in the 70s, and it never happened.
My God, I see the documentary of it. That the dude had ambition, and this is coming from the fact that this is the same director that brought some weird ass trippy stuff.
Yeah, El Topo and the Holy Mountain. I think the Holy Mountain is what got him the Dune gig, and basically it's like the speech Peter Ludlow gave at the opening of Jurassic Park San Diego, where he says it was like the man himself. It was bold, it was impractical, it was not meant to be. But from the fallout of that Dune not happening, we got several things. Like Dan O'Bannon was the effects master who gave everything up to go to Jodorowsky to make Dune happen. And watch the documentary. It explains how, thanks to some trippy opium while talking to the guy, he just thought, I must do everything for this guy. It was not just another job. It was almost like a religious experience.
Yeah, Jodorowsky being like a cult leader that just kind of sucked everyone in, and fed them, like all this, endless, hype, like when he hired Orson Welles and said, if you do this movie, I'll literally close down your favorite restaurants so the chef from that can come and make meals for you every day. Like he's just, yeah.
He was gonna have Mick Jagger play. Was it Duke Leto?
I think it was Fade. I think it was Fade
Yeah,
Ralph.
Fade
I think
Ralph.
that's
And
yeah.
David Carradine was going to be Duke Leto, because he said, "I saw you in a kung fu movie. Kung fu is very much like the honorable trait. You're going to be my Duke Leto."
Yeah. And then what's his name? Salvador Dali was going to be Emperor. What's his name? Emperor Shaddam the Fourth. And because he wanted literally like $100,000 for every minute that he was going to be on screen, Jodorowsky decided, okay, I'll just have a robot duplicate who will speak most of his lines. And it's just lots of stuff. Lots of completely ambitious. Yeah.
Yeah,
completely crazy. Yeah,
and you hear about what he wanted to do in storyboards and descriptions, and you're like, okay, how are you going to make that happen in 1970s? And this was pre-Star Wars, by the way. So it sounded,
which coincidentally also was the result of this movie failing, because
like he wouldn't compromise.
It almost feels like it almost feels like all Hollywood at that time saw the storyboards and like got ideas of their own.
Well, I know what made Derek laugh was that he went to every major company, including Disney, and you're all like, good luck letting Disney have a scene of a supporting movie where a guy gets chopped limb from limb before losing his head and everything.
Or where a woman takes a drop of blood and turns it into semen.
Maybe if he went to them in the 80s, that might have happened.
Yeah. But still,
they had some dark shit in the 80s. A fucking black hole. They had, I think, Something Wicked to Say Comes, and oh my god, Return to Oz. Holy hell!
The Watcher in the Woods.
Yeah. But, Black Cauldron.
Tron was like even trippy enough that it was almost close to Jodorowsky at some level.
Yeah. We're getting a new Tron follow-up. Jared Leto showed up a set photo from a picture of a costume from Tron Ares.
Ares.
Yeah. So Jodorowsky's Dune never happened, but thanks to Dan O'Bannon falling off of that, he ended up writing Alien with Ron Shusett. And because Jodorowsky got all these great artists to make that movie, one of them included Swiss surrealist Hans Rudy Giger, who he even thought when he saw the book, if this guy could direct a monster, you would get something truly original. So the first thing he did when he met Ridley Scott for directing Star Beast, which later became known as Alien, was he shoved Giger's book in at Ridley, and Ridley thought, God, this is like 80% of our problem solved. And even the studios are like, do you really want this creepy surrealist guy? His girlfriend committed suicide, all this stuff. We really want him on our project? He said, no. We're going to be shooting by so-and-so. We're going to do it. This part will be the hardest part to get, but this thing is just beautiful, not just threatening. So we got Alien, an iconic thing, all because of that fallout. And, now I don't even know if I'd be the person I was without Alien. So
yeah.
But yeah,
so it's one of those things like, everything worked out as for the better, or it worked out as it should have been.
Yeah, Star Wars ended up becoming the pop culture nexus of like sci-fi and fantasy that Dune probably would have had if it had come out as intended. I don't even know if Star Wars would even be a thing if George saw that and thought, why would my space fantasy have anything to compete with that? Because he wanted to do Princess of Mars and he couldn't do that, so he figured I'd make my own space opera and history, the rest is history. So we did get a Dune eventually, not Jodorowsky's, but it was
David Lynch's, and it's a movie.
He himself admits it's sad for him to revisit because he did not have final cut, and I believe they locked him out of the editing room at a point where he doesn't really consider he had a vision for a movie and everything, because he read this book. He thought, okay, because they offered it to him. I'm sure his agent pressured him into taking this sci-fi gag since he turned down the Star Wars gig from George. Because there's a very funny story on the internet. You can find it when Lynch described how Lucas was farming him out to see if he'd do Return of the Jedi, and he started describing the lore and the merchandise, and he kept saying the entire time there was this persistent headache that kept growing and growing the longer he was with George, and that made him say, like, I don't know if I'd be able to keep up with this. So he turned that down respectfully. I mean, it was mutually amicable, and I think George figured, Lynch and my style probably wouldn't mesh anyway. Besides, George would have ended up micromanaging from behind, and we all know Lynch is an independent director that's used to his freedom, so I'm sure they gave him this.
Which it's funny considering the fact that George at the time was all about his artistic freedom. So it'd be like two puzzly charged ions going at each other, and it's gonna be a messy thing.
See, because Richard
deflecting.
Marquand,
It's like if you ever tried to put two positive halves of magnets together,
they just repel.
It's not gonna go. It's not gonna go.
So then, I'm sure his agent said, you turn down Star Wars. If you make Dune right, this could be the next Star Wars. I think that was because Jedi had just ended, and they didn't know there was gonna be any more movies. So the sci-fi arena was open. So they figured, let's make Dune. They kept saying, we're going to make the Star Wars for adults. That was what they kept on selling the studios on. Like, this is going to be a Star Wars for adults. And they got Lynch. And Lynch was allowed to be creative in some aspects. And he did stick close to the book. But there's some changes he made. Like, for example, instead of the weirding way, we got the weirding modules. Because I think his words were, I don't want to see that.
I didn't want to see Kung Fu in sand dunes.
That's what he said, yeah. And so we got these blaster guns. But other than that, it does stick to the book, but because the studio couldn't afford a 3-hour picture for more screen times, things had to be cut. It kind of feels like you just like the build up is good, the build up to the fall of House Atreides, but then the Fremen stuff feels like we kind of just montage through that, and then we're suddenly at he's a revolutionary leader all of a sudden. And,
he's a revolutionary leader, and it does feel like the themes of like the dangers of like Paul being a messiah do feel like they get a little left by the wayside. I mean, I'll admit even like Jodorowsky's version sort of sounded like it didn't entirely understand that idea, and that's because, at the time it was written, people, at the time the first Dune book was written, people kind of had that misconception, like, oh, this is at least, that's how I kind of got it, because even it ends, Lynch's version even kind of ends with like, oh, the rains come back, see, Paul really is the Messiah, look at all this good stuff that's happening because of Paul.
The reason we bring this up is because in the book of Dune, I think Frank Herbert was an ecologist first, and a newspaper guy, and he figured about how we're rushing to exploit resources really fast without consideration for what it does to the planet, and he thought he'd wrap that message up in another take of the hero's journey. Only in his version, his message is like, whenever the worst thing that could happen to your civilization is you do get a hero. And in the eyes of that hero, sometimes great atrocities are justified because, it's all for the greater good or whatever. It was the warning of following a messianic figure. And people seem to have, it was so subtle, people seem to have missed it with the book because Dune Messiah follows with the fallout of those actions.
And people didn't react positively to that at all.
Lynch's version was cut in a lot of places. There is a fan cut by someone called Spice Runner or something like that on YouTube that reconstructs the theatrical cut with the extended cut plus a lot of archival deleted footage to make probably the most complete version of Lynch's Dune that feels 80%, 90% of the way to the book. But I think after that didn't quite take off because even Frank Herbert, when he was still alive, they asked him in interviews. He said, "I already saw the first draft of Dune. Hopefully, David's a great director. Hopefully, he'll use the notes I left him," and she did. But he said that we're going to be making another one. Even Lynch thought, they might make another one. Probably not with me, but they'll make another one. And that sequel never happened. But on the positive side, you got David Lynch's Dune is where you get all the iconic Duneisms people think come from the book, but they actually come from a movie, such as the most famous Baron line of "the spice must flow." That comes from the book.
Yeah, the spice must flow, or the sleeper has awakened. Which are cool lines, and they do sort of evoke like Frank Herbert's work to a certain extent, which is something Villeneuve also does later in Dune Part 2, which we'll talk about later. But at least with some lines. But yeah,
it is. It was the closest we got, but then after that, the most we got from Dune was a PC game, a few.
Well, I never got to say. What I should
Sorry.
was.
Go ahead.
So I did actually decide to watch that version before the new one came, and for the most part, I kind of seemed to understand what was going on. But it did take me like having to have the subtitles on, so I know who's babbling what nonsense words they were talking about.
Well, they throw a lot of exposition at you in the first 5 minutes alone, where you're already on brain overload and you're not even that deep into the movie.
Yeah. Yeah,
because we get
exactly like with Princess Irulan's, big speech at the beginning, and being like, oh, here's everything and how it works. It's like, oh, okay, this is a lot. And
but
then
then
like
the navigators.
yeah,
I did remember initially feeling that sense of like, oh yeah, let's get into it as soon as Paul survived his Water of Life experience and just shouted out the continuation to his father's words, say like the sleeper will soon awaken, and he did, and that's like, oh yeah, let's go topple an empire, god damn it.
yeah.
But yeah,
Although revisiting it after seeing the new ones, if I'm not in the mood, it will put me to sleep a little bit.
what's funny is the first half, you're just going, is any of this going to be on the test? No, it is the year. This is Shaddam the Fourth. This is the planet. This is the Dune Desert Planet, Caladan, Getty Prime. It's like you're like, is any of this?
Well, what about Duncan? Duncan doesn't matter. He's just there.
Oh God, Duncan.
Yeah. Exactly.
He's like, hi Duncan, bye Duncan.
Hi, Duncan.
Hi Duncan, bye Duncan.
Oh man.
Hi Duncan. Oh no, you're dead. Yeah.
Now
Or early at Kynes who just shows up, gives the exposition, and then he dies off screen. Apparently, he doesn't even get a big
Max von Sydow wandering into the desert. I made that joke of, I hope this has become a theme with my characters.
Yeah. Judge Dredd.
Yeah. And then Lawrence Fonseca. And then there are a few iconic things from the fun. You got Sting playing Bad Boy Fade Routha. I mean, he doesn't really do much other than kill a guy and then fight Paul at the end. But he does have that iconic scene of walking out of the steamer wearing nothing but that weird ass Harkonnen bikini.
Also song.
Harkini.
For some reason, that's the only thing everybody else remembers of that movie.
Yeah.
And the
It's
worms.
Like, hey, you ever see Dune? Oh yeah, the guy with the weird thong and
I remember when
the worms, right?
I remember when I brought Dune up to my mother. I remember the first thing she said. This was like back in high school when I had read like the first chapter of the book. I remember when I said, "Oh, I read the first chapter of Dune," and she was like, "Oh, you mean the movie where Sting walks out in the weird speedo?"
That's like iconic, I guess.
My mom remember.
And then they made their Baron Harkonnen unusually manic and grotesque, more so than usual. Because in the book, he's a patient manipulator, and he's huge and large, but he uses that to disarm his opponents and like, oh, this guy won't do nothing to me, and then that's when he strikes. He's kind of like the Kingpin, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like the Kingpin, like everyone thinks.
Even the Kingpin is kind of reserved. He only got a little bit eccentric when someone pissed him off.
Yeah, but
or embarrassed in front of their girlfriend.
But the '84 version of the Baron was overly manic. I think all those traits that were supposed to be fades and Raban got transferred onto the Baron, and Raban is just a smiling doofus most of the time.
Yeah, he's just there to walk around and be like, ha 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 ha, this is happening. Ha ha ha, that is happening. Oh no, Paul's here. And then he loses his head.
This bug juice is delicious.
Yeah, but you can't deny there's some great visuals, like the Navigator folding space, the Getty Prime looking very like a industrial hellscape music video from like the dystopian Macintosh era, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Duke Leto, for what little presence he has, you do kind of feel that this is a noble guy. Their Lady Jessica left a lot to be desired for me, but and then Chani, Derek can't stop saying how her only contribution is tell me about your homeworld, Usul, most of the time.
Yeah. And even when she shows up, she just dumps everything Paul could ever need to know about her. Like, I am Chani, and I forget what the rest of her line is, but it's just like, okay, now we know who you are. And there's not even a Jamis fight in this version. Is Jamis even in this, or was he going to be in this? Because I noticed in that version there's like two little kids that are with him. Are those supposed to be Jamis's kids, like in the book?
That extended cut I mentioned does have Jamis fight Paul in order for Paul to be accepted into the Fremen, because he's the one that said it could be Harkonnen spies, and then he fights him and kills him, and Paul actually feels very, very bad. Even Jessica points out, this is the first time he's ever killed a man. So that was cut. And rewatching it reintegrated into this extended cut on YouTube, which is free. It's 3 hours long, but the whole thing's there. It does... I think that might be my definitive way to watch Lynch's Dune.
Okay.
But yeah.
The 84.
I'll have to give that a look sometime.
Yeah. And then... But another great thing about Lynch's Dune, Patrick Stewart does make an impression as Gurney Halleck.
He does.
Although
I don't know
the
if
special
Patrick Stewart
effects
read
that
the
he had to
book.
work with didn't suit him.
The
Yeah.
shields. I can't watch it without laughing now every time I see it.
The weird Microsoft Paint, like early 2000s Microsoft Paint shield. At least that's what it made me think of for some reason. The Microsoft Paint screensavers shields.
Yeah, they just. Oh man.
Why though? Why they have to look like? Hey, what if we conceptualized Minecraft like 5 decades before it ever happened?
And
Yeah.
then, I think Kyle MacLeod does do a good job as Paul, especially when he delivers the Sleeper Has Awakened and Long Live the Fighters. They all sound great with him. And Stilgar, even though he's not in it a lot, he does have one of my most favorite lines in the movie that Derek knows I love quoting every time I get a chance. Do we have Worm Sign?
Also, we have worm sign the likes of which even God has never seen.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that
love
is
the
a
worms
line.
coming out. That is great. And yeah, so and plus, even if you're not a fan of Lynch's film, you can't deny a very lovely scene is when he rides the Shah Halud worm and they start playing Toto's rock guitar as they just get on the back of the worm, and you're like, I don't know what's going on, but this is happening.
Yeah.
I'm riding a giant sandworm. Your argument is invalid.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, just for giggles, just before we did this recording, me and Derek watched the miniseries, which from Sci-Fi, which is at the time that was the most that took the most from the book, and I think for most fans, it had the most adaptation of the book in it versus the Lynch version at the time. But
I must say the opening title looks like, oh, I guess Mist got a mod.
Yeah.
The biggest thing about the miniseries that's its biggest attraction is the fact that, well, it's a sci-fi series. So if you grew up with the Sci-Fi Channel in the 2000s, you know what that means. You're gonna get some pretty hokey visuals where you're like,
shoddy CGI.
oh man,
Yeah.
the worm just made us.
If you all thought Sharknado was like, oh my god, how could they have made it this bad? It's like, oh, that was just 2010. That was
You know
generous.
You don't know,
2000.
you don't know what bad CGI looks like.
It was a shame because there's some great. It does at times feel like we're seeing sets and extended stuff from like Babylon 5 or Farscape, which is good. But then you'll see some stuff that say I'm watching a PS1 cutscene for Final Fantasy 8 or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Like the worm. Yeah.
or the characters will be, I guess, the green screen where you're saying I feel like I'm playing a PC game with FMVs like Rebel Assault or Jedi Knight 2.
Exactly.
And there's some great performances, but oh man, the biggest name star that's on the VHS tape is probably the sleepiest performer in this movie, with William Hurt playing Duke Leto, and we were like, Will,
I'm on, man.
yeah, yeah, we're like, Will, are you did you lose
You're like, yeah.
did you lose a bet? Did do you owe someone a favor? Because he has the feeling
Yeah.
of like, I'm just gotta be here to be here. And when he actually got mad about how they try to take the life of my son, I'm like, oh, so he can emote in this movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
He can about it. He finally woke up. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because, like, actually, if I recall correctly, Oscar Isaac actually, like, talked to William Hurt, if I recall correctly, when he was going to play Duke Leto in, the new version. And, like, apparently William Hurt, like, had, like, a whole book, literally has a whole book about Dune and, like, the philosophy of Dune and stuff. So I wonder if that was, like, before or after, like, if he got, like, if it's, like, he played that role he didn't like, and then he read the book, and he's like, oh, no, I wish I had done more.
Oh shit! I messed up a good
Yeah.
grand time.
I know that he doesn't officially marry Lady Jessica, but when he's like caressing her and everything, I wanted to dub in that line from Space Lost in Space of "Love you, wife."
Yeah, I love you.
And we know William Hurt can be a great actor. That's the thing, that when you look at this and you're like, he's like on autopilot for most of it, and it's even more garish because a lot of the other actors are putting their all into it. Like Ian McNeice as Baron Harkonnen, who I think carries the first episode we watched because we only had time to watch the first one, and we might revisit the other ones on our own time. But if that's an indication of what's to come, you're like, oof.
I feel like what's enough.
Yeah.
Oh god, when the strongest reaction we had too was Duncan was a little more innocent about, oh, hi, Duncan, and everything. So then when he says to Paul, I got to stay here with the Fremen, I follow your orders, words, we see a Harkonnen glider
Oh
come
no,
in.
he's gonna be taken out.
And
And
then
he didn't expect how he was gonna be taken out though.
they fire a missile. He does a sudden turn around with a shocked expression, and then you cut to an explosion. And I went, "What the?" I yelled out, "What the fuck!" out loud because I did not expect.
That's literally this type of they literally gave him the reaction that should be akin to Willem Dafoe's say, "Oh,
Yeah.
so his death as the Green Goblin in Spider-Man 1."
You know what would be funny? The dub in comic book guys line right before the missile hits. Oh, I've wasted my life. Which is even funnier if you know the story of what happens to Duncan further in the books. We won't spoil it for anybody, but if you know the books, that becomes even funnier. But Duncan's exit in the newest one was the best way he got out, because in Lynch's film, it's like he shows up in the middle of the Harkonnen thing to fight a few guys. Next thing you know, his head gets shot, and we go, "Oh, I guess that's the end of him." And then the missile just it caught me so off guard I couldn't help but laugh hysterically because I didn't expect it. But yeah, but for a time that was the best.
Also, the worms just look like Dookie at some angles.
Literally, they just look like turds in cat litter. Because at least the worms in the Lynch film were iconic enough to be repainted onto a lot of the covers.
Parodied so much.
Like the Carlo Rambaldi space worm the minute you see one.
Yep. With its three jaws, I guess, opening up. Like, even the graphic novel adaptation of Dune, like, even uses that design, or, like, a variation of it.
Yeah, it does look like an earthworm, but it has a deadly edge.
Yeah.
So, for a long time, they've been talking about another Dune version, but we never got one until finally, a couple of years ago, Denis Villeneuve of Prisoners and... What else did he do? He did a couple.
He did Blade Runner 2049.
Now, 2049 was his first major big. Oh, wait, Arrival. It was Arrival, Prisoners.
Right.
He did Sicario. He did all kinds of interesting films that everybody says has a style to them, not just in look, but just a feel to them, where they were very serious, but they weren't like positively grim or nothing. There was a life to them. It was strange, and he got to do his first big sci-fi break with. I mean, Arrival was a nice indie film that was amazing. And then he got to do an iconic franchise with Blade Runner 2049, a sequel to the original Ridley Scott film. And most people, for the most part, really like that film. So I liked it.
Yeah. Blade Runner 2049, yeah, that's a good one. I haven't watched it in a while, but I remember it being really interesting and very, very in line with, like, the nature of Ridley Scott's original film, very slow, methodical, and yeah.
But it also did its own spin, and like Ryan Gosling is pretty good in it before he was just a Ken, and that was also the first collaboration with Bautista and Villeneuve, which would become a regular thing with him. And that was that movie that made him say, "I'm going to be doing serious. I'm not just going to be like The Rock and another jock being a wrestler turned actor. I'm going to actually be acting." And he does act his ass off in the one scene he has in Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah. So he has character, and yeah,
even if it's just like for the brief scene he was in, because it was just the beginning and then he was out of it after a while, but you were compelled. So he said he wanted to always make, he's okay doing his cape stuff and his heroics, but he really wanted to be seen as like an actor's actor, and he thinks Denis knew what to work out of him. So that's why he wanted to work with him when they said they were going to do a new adaptation of Dune. Of course, Bautista was right there. So I mean, there was a lot of writing. They had a stellar cast attached to this upcoming Dune. They had Josh Brolin. They had Oscar Isaac, wonderful guy. Rebecca Ferguson. They had Stellan Skarsgård. They had a lot of top tier talent attached, and people were wondering if they could make this quote unquote dry material, entertaining. And but I remember when the first preview came out. They put out the Pink Floyd's Eclipse song with it, which is funny because Jodorowsky wanted Pink Floyd to do the soundtrack for Dune back when he was going to make it. So a nice little I think it shows you that Villeneuve is a student of film history. He knows how to pay his honors and respect to that. So, and then there's some visuals where you go like, okay, this is gonna be interesting. I mean, like, pretty much the trailer is the full scene where the Reverend Mother pretty much holds the Gom Jabbar to Paul's neck and tells him, "Remove your hand from the box and you'll die." And you're like, okay, this trailer really escalated. And then it starts with the beautiful music playing along with the some iconic imagery people know, like the worms following the harvester, Dr. Yue walking among the Harkonnens. There's like a lot of iconic imagery. Like if you read the books or seen the other, you're like, oh, I know where this is going. So we're wondering, can this movie pull it off? Although there were some people erroneously thinking that this Dune was a remake of Dune from '84, even though that's just another adaptation. It's like how there's Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory and there's Charlie's Chocolate Factory. Coincidentally, Timothy Chalamet went on to play a Wonka, but that's besides the point. I remember when the people were saying, "So is this a remake of of that one from '84?" I'm like, it's an adaptation.
Yeah, different adaptation of the same source material. Yeah, but it still borrows like some things, like sort of the Fremen design does kind of look. I mean, granted, that's more or less what's in Frank Herbert's original book, but like it does seem like kind of an upgraded version of what like Lynch and it, because like even though Lynch's costumes, obviously had a lot of detail put into them, like Villeneuve, the newer Fremen costumes look like kind of the real deal, if that makes any sense, as if like. This is like everything else was just a copy, but this is actually like the original genuine article. That's how these costumes felt, but it felt like they still used like Lynch's designs like a base for it.
Oh, speaking of that, oh god, the miniseries where we saw the still suits, we're like, that's the still suits? Derek was like,
yeah, those like pajamas.
No, even the fucking Lynch movie did the still suits right.
Even funnier, the Sardaukar uniforms looked more like still suits than the actual still suits.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this new one looked like okay, and then they started.
I can't let go of this. Okay, like I know sci-fi projects aren't really that high end, but you'd think they would focus on things that would be, important with like the plot, especially with needing the ability to survive on a planet that literally has no fucking water on it. Those things couldn't even hold a fucking like soaked up super soaker battle.
No.
Yeah. So the production value looked amazing. They filmed on location, which is a big deal because at the time, a lot of indoor and green screening was taking over like a lot of like exotic locales. But they filmed in exotic locations. They had production value. They had pretty seamless effects that blended in with the environment. You don't get no garish looking worms or odd spaceships. I mean, the ornithopters, they're so incredible that they actually got themselves a Lego set that most Lego fans are already calling Toy of the Year, and it just barely came out.
Yeah. Because they look exactly like more or less what I had in mind. When,
they function like...
Yeah.
Too.
They look very the visual style is very interesting with like these new Doom movies because like they look fantastical but they also look somewhat grounded. Like you can believe that like the world of Dune in these new movies used to be our world, but now it's just become this, if that makes any sense. You know, it's like it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like I said, it's tactile enough, but it's not weird edge sci-fi that's so beyond us, but it's not so grounded that's just a shipping truck being floated outside. No, they managed to make it feel timeless and otherworldly, but also very, updated. It's hard to explain, but Villeneuve's style really worked well with this new movie, and I went to go see it after hearing about the book a lot and all the unmade projects. So Ian and I actually went to go see it in IMAX when it opened up, even though it came out on HBO Max the same day. But I gotta say, I was really into the atmosphere of that one, and everyone's performances were like Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron was such a presence. And I remember we pointed out how years later watching it again, is very evocative as Marlon Brando as Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, which I noted was funny because of course like Marlon Brando plays a character who was based on a character from Heart of Darkness, which Orson Welles was at one point going to be in, and he was going to play that character. and Orson Welles was Baron Harkonnen, and of course now Stellan Skarsgård's ripping off Marlon Brando. So it's like it all comes full circle. Not ripping off Marlon Brando, but just echoing Marlon Brando. Sorry, but it's like it all came full circle somehow.
I'm pretty sure in another timeline and another attempt was made. I'm pretty sure, like if Coppola did Dune and he probably would have gotten Brando to play the Baron, and I think he would have been a great Baron.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that would have been interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but then he probably asked, "Where's the family?" Because that's like the central thing of his movies is a family. Because I remember he said he shot a lot of stuff for Godfather, and the producer said, "Okay, you gave me a good procedural, but where's the family? You said this is a family movie, like not like for families to show, but you said that was gonna be the heart, the emotional core of the story, and he recut it and edited to make it that. That's why it resonates. But yeah, there was Oscar Isaacs was probably my favorite version of Duke. And the Duke Leto, and oh my gosh, that's the never more did you ever want this guy to get out of it because you liked him so much. You know, if you read the book or you know the versions, you know he's doomed to die. So you're like, it's more heartbreaking when you see House Atreides fall with him because you're like, damn it, can't he just have a timeline where he doesn't fall to this trap?
Yeah. It's
called Force Awakens.
That's why we laugh at that line. I think that was thrown in, but really new as a way to like
acknowledge. Yeah, when he says, "I wanted to be a pilot before I became a leader." Yeah, exactly. It was probably something he worked in just as a mom.
I had to think about it. I can't remember if I actually did go to the theater to see Dune because I wasn't really into. No, I think I did go to see the theater after I watched 84. I was like, okay, this is actually interesting. I think I actually could go and take off. I could watch it on Max, but like, no, I'm gonna give it the attention. Of course, had to wait until like Halloween mindset was over because it had to come in October. It's like, dude, move to November. You'll get better like audiences with that. God's sakes. But yeah, I did see it in the theater, and I was like, oh my god, I gotta see it again. So of course I went to see it on Max.
Oh yeah.
I think I watched it with you, I think.
Yes, you did. And oh my gosh, of course, another ingredient that made this movie work too was Hans Zimmer making his otherworldly music. He got an Academy Award for this. In fact, it was because he was working on this movie that he was unable to collaborate with his usual collaborator, Christopher Nolan, on Tenet, which was also released at the time. So, but he knew he had to do Dune. I think he's been a fan. That's why when he was offered Dune, he's all like, yes, I got to be the one to make the music for this. And he came up with otherworldly sounds, interesting samples, percussion he used. I mean, when you listen to his soundtrack, you feel like you're transported to another world, if that makes any sense.
It does. It reminds me of like what the, I forget who it was, but it's like what James Cameron originally wanted for like Avatar, which some people feel that he didn't the soundtrack to Avatar is fine, but it's like plenty of people feel like it didn't quite reach that level of like here's an alien experience, where I think Zimmer does do that a little bit better. Like you do feel like you're in. Well, I mean, the thing about Zimmer is that it does feel like, again, it's like the movie itself. It's like grounded, but it's like it's become something else. It's like our world became something completely alien and foreign to us. And
like Derek pointed this out, and I felt the same way too. With Zimmer, the worms aren't treated as like kaiju that just come and sink trawlers in this one. It's almost like a religious experience every time the worms appear because they have like this almost ethereal choir play. And that's when Kynes does the let his water mark the passing in prayer that they always do whenever the worms Shahud Khalid passes by.
Yeah.
And you hear the music, and it's almost like a religious experience.
It's the music. Seeing like the ground shake and become soft, literally like the underfoot. It's like these aren't like freaking tremor sandworms coming up to get you. This is like an ethereal entity that rules over this planet.
Yeah, like a biblical wrath almost. Part
the Dune seas to make its presence known.
Yeah.
On top of that, even the teeth are given importance with the Chris knife. Like when Shadat Mapes is describing the importance of this weapon, it comes from the maker and everything. And
hold on, just keep going.
You got it.
Okay.
But yeah, and oh my goodness, like I said though, just a lot that. But the thing about part one is, it is indeed a part one. It is.
Yeah.
It is like.
Hey, I know nobody's gonna be able to see this, so I'm just gonna show this to the guys here.
Oh, you got a crisp replica.
Cool.
Yep, run the Lynch dude.
Yeah.
I was gonna get. I got this at Steel City. I was gonna get the Chris Knight from the new one, but they didn't have it,
But, yeah, I don't
which
know
is
if you
weird
do
because
see-
they were selling it when I got this one, and I thought, okay, I'll get the next new one when I go visit next time. No, it's gone.
I'm sure next time you do see one, you're gonna get one.
Probably because that's why it was probably gone because it was already popular enough. If people, as soon as people saw it, I was like, that's one for the new Dune movie. I want that.
Like after Dune Part 2, they're definitely going to be selling out of Chris Snipes every time they appear. That's for sure. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Oh, these are pretty cool too.
yeah. I
Anyways,
can see that. But yeah.
And what were we talking about? Oh yeah, sandworms.
Oh yeah, there's a lot that in this new version. But like I said, it's a lot of groundwork, a lot of setup because you're setting up the great houses, you're setting up the players. It's like setting up the chessboard, and you're setting up Paul to go through an arc. And I'm sure some people feel like it does that funny thing where as soon as a character at the end says this is just the beginning, the movie ends at that point.
Yeah. Even in like Disney's Dinosaur, where it says our
It's
journey
all-
is far from over, and then end credits roll.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's actually a TV show. It's like this is just the beginning. Hyphenated project ends here.
Yeah.
And then, oh man, but yeah, like I said though, there's a lot of things in it. Like, I thought I found it funny how there's a lot of universal things that carry between each version. Like, all versions had a different variation of the box test with the Gom Jabbar and everything.
Yeah.
And
But with the only standout being the new one, where they don't show you the hand. They all they show you is just Paul put his hand in the box. You're just seeing the outer shell of the box. You're not seeing any X-rays or thoughts, or like maybe we're seeing like Paul's imagination of what it feels his hand must be undergoing as it's inside the box. No, it's literally the moment where Hans Zimmer is like, no, don't let the effects guys do anything. I'll do the cooking this time.
yeah,
Yeah.
the
I'll do
music,
the
Just let the
Just do
soundtrack play
visual
our imaginations
storytelling.
to its peak.
Yeah.
and then once he starts resisting the pain and the Muad'Dib motif starts playing, that's when you start going like, okay, yeah, you really get into it. Even the ladies are like, okay, stop. No one else has ever gone through that much pain. But oh, and I love how the Benny Gesserit music is just this ethereal chanting where you don't. It's there in some of the major moments. They always had that ethereal chanting underneath to show you that how this is all part of the Benny Gesserit's design and and their plans within plans and everything. So like one scene that
I can't wait for the Benny Gesserit spin-off show.
one thing that
Coming later.
impressed me that when I was watching it first time was after the great Reverend Mother scolds Jessica about thinking she could break the Queechwatch Heterock. They go back into their ship and the chanting goes to an apex and you just see the lights in the rain and you don't really see it take off into the sky, but just the impression of the lights moving overward with the chanting and the brief thing we see of the ship. I thought, damn, that really convinced me for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah. Everything has a very, kind of menacing and also very, it's, as you said, it's very otherworldly and like ethereal and very, sorry, I'm trying to think of the right words here, but it's a very yeah, exactly.
And oh man,
yeah.
and I don't know why, I really love the fall of House Atreides ambush in this version the best out of all, because it's not a bunch of pew pew shooting laser beams like the Lynch version or God.
It's
Toss
very
the fucking bliss out straight towards fucking face.
I know, because I love the Gurney realizing what deep shit they're in when they see the Space King Guild ship dropping off all the Harkonnen fighters, and then you're just
and
seeing,
the very and the very subtle music score. Sorry.
Yeah, and they're just running to get into battle, and you just see it's a hopeless cause already because every carrier is being blown up as they're just pressing on. But then what's funny is the music does this little thing where where after Gurney takes out a few grunts, he decides to rally them into battle, and you get the Atreides bagpipes, which aren't actually bagpipes, but you get them going full thing, and you're thinking, oh, the Atreides might actually have a chance here, and then the Sardaukar show up.
It's like, nope, no, they don't.
Oh, the Sardaukar! They gave them this
Yeah.
whole other language and chanting that is just,
Oh, yeah, it sounds coming like.
yeah, that little throat chanting to.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, the moment you see them, you're just immediately uneasy because you're hearing this creepy language. You're seeing these people being like, marked with blood. And then you start saying, oh crap, human sacrifices too. You're seeing all these like dead people just like laying down in like this nightmarish display that's like so advanced yet somehow so barbaric at the same and almost primitive at the same time, and it's just like immediately is like creeping you out. You're just like, oh crap, do not mess with these guys.
Yeah, that's why I like the Sardaukar in part one, and the like I said, the Harkonnens were really brought up to being depraved without being as crazy as they were in the Lynch version, but you still get a feeling of like these, like Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron is scary. Like,
Yeah.
like
That's another thing that all these adaptations shares, that they always have the Baron floating, even though in the book, it's from what I heard, it's like, yeah, he does have an anti-gravity thing, but that's only just to keep him up because he's just so fat. And of course, all these sectors read it, it's like, oh, so he's anti-gravity, so he can literally just fly above his enemies. It's like, okay, not the intention I was going for, but we'll roll with that.
Okay.
Denis does it the best, sorry.
Yeah, I just reminded myself of this joke. Good Lord, I was led to believe your people survived entirely on water. How is he so fat?
Yeah.
And I like how they made the Baron huge without being like cartoonishly obese. But he's not like quite my 600-pound life, but he's also not like a caricature, like oh, this is what fat people look like. They made him look, well, he looked as menacing as he needed to be, being the way he was, and it looked like he was going to go for a more like bioorganic, almost Cenobite outfit in his initial designs, but they went for a more simple robe, and you can see the things in his spine.
Yeah,
but with the cloak, it definitely gave him an eerie visage, especially when he uses anti-gravity, just like looking like this long, tall figure.
Yeah, not like trying to project himself as like a physical, not just like he's floating above everyone, but as though he's like a physical giant, walking amongst,
and
walking amongst everyone else.
What's funny is there were a few deviations, like Liet Kynes is a lady in this version, but other than that, it's pretty much faithful. So I read some parts of the book and go, damn, they really caught the essence, and they dropped a few complicated things where they didn't need to. Like, for example, I mentioned to Derek watching the miniseries, just this whole subplot where the Harkonnens throw a lot of misgivings to make Thufir or Gurney suspect Lady
Jessica as having betrayed the Atreides family.
And I'm sure putting that...
And as soon as Josie told me like that, I went, that doesn't make any goddamn sense!
Because they mentioned how the traitor is someone close, and even in the book, they don't say the traitor is someone until Dr. Yue makes his move. But, yeah... like I says, part one ends in a way where you're like, okay, this is, you're like, okay, we're gonna get. It's funny, Zendaya's in all the advertising and she's the opening narration, but she only appears as a few scenes as Chani in the end. And they said that part two is going to be the chance to really see the Fremen story happen. And so, of course, when we heard part two was official, we couldn't really wait now. Okay, I think we did enough preamble on the build up to this and gushing about part one enough. Let's talk about part two now.
Almost an hour.
I mean, that's how big. That's how big this is.
Yeah, that's how much you could talk about Dune.
Let's just start off right there.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part two is like a fucking godsend.
We're gonna go into spoilers for sure. So if you want the short version of it, should you see it? Yes. Do you need to see part one? It might help because a lot of groundwork, but. You could also probably jump in, and maybe you might have an interesting experience jumping in too. But for the most part, doing that would be kind of like jumping into Endgame without seeing Infinity War or anything else. Like, you would still be entertained, but you get a lot more payoff with the first parts when you watch the second part. Actually, have payoff. So I'd say, and who knows what this will be like at viewing parties when you get to watch both part one and part two together in one seamless, go.
Yeah.
I feel like it's gonna be exactly how I felt watching it chapters 1 and 2 back to back, where it's like, oh my god, it's actually just like it all just comes together. So, or I'm trying to think of something else. It was something that was kind of also a part 1 and part 2 deal. I can't think. I think it.
Deathly Hallows, maybe.
Well, it wasn't that. It was that was like way earlier. I was thinking a little bit more recent, but I definitely think it was.
There was it.
Yeah.
And then there was.
Yeah, it was probably it.
But yeah. Oh, I'm sure there was another thing that did a part 1, part 2 recently, but it's eluding us right now. But
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, though. Okay, so let's go Dune 2. First of all, this movie is huge. Like, and I'm saying just because they did the not just a bigger budget and better like shot. It's just like it felt like they really got ambitious with, one-upping what they set up in part 1, man.
Yeah, the scale is just like it's one of the first times in a while that I've like felt the actual like weight and scale of the movie, like the whole Harkonnen arena scene that happens later. But that was moments like that, or obviously the sandworms coming to like destroy the Sardaukar. Like those are the few times where I was like, oh my god, this feels massive.
And
this feels
They put a lot of extras on screen. I haven't seen that much extras since like one of those like medieval war epics like by Scott or like Nolan in The Dark Knight Rises, where they have like just a bunch of people running at the same time, and it doesn't feel like
wait, sorry to interrupt, but I just remembered what was that felt like. Oh, it's so serious so much. This part and that part was the Halloween 2018 with Halloween Kills.
Okay.
Oh yes, Halloween.
Yeah, I see that.
That one entire night.
Yeah, I can see that.
Anyways, continuing on.
But man, like just the size and the sets feel like when you go into like the siege are pretty amazing. The Emperor's rooms and everything, like the Harkonnen arena, like you mentioned, that just felt, I know they weren't going for Giger-esque, but it definitely evoked Giger to me with like the surreal lights and everything. Just.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like something Giger would have, and at the very least would have been like in the back of Giger's mind. Like it definitely has that kind of like advanced, but also like kind of decadent, like feel to it.
And like I said, even like the action sequences, like when the Fremen are taking out a harvester, it feels like a big moment. And it kind of reminded me of like in T1 when like the resistance fighters would like be sniping at hunter killer tanks every now and then. But it was just a proposition because it could get them killed. Yeah,
exactly. And you're seeing like the big mechanical legs that are like so huge. It almost made me think like when the funny thing, speaking about like someone randomly getting blown up by missiles, when like Shani like first blows up the Harkonnen soldier, like the first thing that came to my mind was like Star Wars Battlefront, where like I'd use rockets just randomly blow people. Yeah.
And another thing too, They do things like, for example, there's a scene where the Harkonnens need to get to higher ground because they sense a thumper, and they just sort of just float. But the way it was done, you're like, that's how I knew. Oh, this is going to be special. That's in the first 5 minutes. You see it, and you're thinking, ah, shit, here we go.
Yeah, and I'll never get tired of seeing masked troopers. Like, I don't know, for some reason, just like masked troopers walking around, just and speaking an alien language. It's like that always gets me hooked, for some reason. And even like the kind of little personality they have, or like they're constantly looking around, they're even like disagreeing with each other, making commands. I don't know why. It really sucks you into the mood because like there's still some degree of humanization even with these completely decadent, repulsive, invaders basically, and like yeah.
And what's funny is how a lot of stuff is like grand and spacious with the Harkonnen stuff, but things are more intimate and personal with all the Fremen stuff, like sitting in the siege tents together or just the water ceremonies. There's all kinds of stuff where you go like, it feels more intimate. It feels more personal, and you see stuff like the Emperor stuff and the Harkonnen stuff, and it feels very decadent and very isolating, if that makes sense.
Very big, but very small. Whereas like the Fremen are like more reserved people, so their spaces are much smaller, and they're not as much about, like the big flashiness, even though they do have very like beautiful looking like temples, built all over Arrakis. They're much more smaller and, as you said, intimate.
Mm-hmm. And another thing too is the seeing this in IMAX, they filmed for it. You really do feel it, and I'm sure even on the regular screens it feels just as big. But we were on an IMAX screen. I hear that the 70 millimeter print version for the true IMAX, which is with an actual 70-foot tall screen, looks like just out of this world for the few people that can't see it. Unfortunately, where we live, I think the nearest one of those screens is like all the way up in Texas or whatever. Or we'd have to go on a road trip if we actually had to go see it.
Yeah, exactly. We'd have to cross state lines.
But
yeah, my closest IMAX screens aren't as far away out of state as these guys, but it's definitely like a trip, and I'm already kind of having to focus on saving up funds to go on a out of state trip to meet up with a friend. So
but if you have a chance to see it in IMAX,
I will say if they do like one of those like see Dune and IMAX building up to the next one that they'll advertise, I would definitely go for that one.
Especially if they do like a Dune double feature day in IMAX.
Yeah.
Dude,
or a triple feature where you could watch all of them.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think this would be weird to say, but I think I can compare this also to like Lord of the Rings in terms of scale. Like when you see like Return of the King and see all those soldiers, it is very much like that moment when they do the siege at Gondor.
Yeah, exactly. Like it has that very Lord of the Rings scale to it, like all these different.
But you can feel like you could touch everything. You feel every impact and hit. It's not like a bunch of CGI bodies just flare over there. You feel like this is chaotic war going on, but not in a way where it's like disorienting you, but you're like in the thick of it.
Yeah. In the thick of it, and like the camera is always trying to and it's like interesting. Like I remember watching Cinema Wins talking about the first Dune Part 1, which this one did too, where it's like most like stuff starts like outrunning the camera as if like you're on the ground, like you're like a what do you call that, like a military reporter? What do you combat reporter?
War photographer, yeah.
Yeah, war photographer. So as if like the camera's taking that position and it's like physically filming this like massive epic scale sci-fi battle, and like it's.
That's why I like the beginnings of the Fall of House Atreides, because you got that moment, like I said, it's following Gurney and the Atreides soldiers desperately running to get some munitions or whatever, and you're just seeing stuff blow up ahead of them and behind them, and the music is adding to that sense of like hopelessness. But like it says, very wartime photography in it, and even like the Beast Raban capturing Atreides guys and beheading them out of frame, it feels very much like if you're like a war reporter seeing a war crime being committed.
Exactly.
But in this one, it definitely feels like that once the final battles begin. And not only are the big battles impressive, but also the intimate, one-on-one fights are pretty impressive. Like, there's a great moment on Gidi Prime with the Harkonnen arena showing Fade Rotha getting his kicks fighting off the drugged soldiers to help, inspire the people of Gidi Prime.
Yeah, and again, you start off and you're hearing like all this chanting, and you're building up Fade, and like Fade already is kind of this terrifying person because like he's cutting a woman's neck, and then like saying feed her to my darlings or something like that, and then you see these women with like sharp teeth, and I don't even remember if that wasn't in the book, right?
I don't think
am I forgetting? Yeah, but it's like it feels like something that Frank Herbert would have wrote, which is very good. It's very good on Denis' part that he's even like paying so much attention, like doing its philosophy and its world, that he could even throw something like that in. It still fits in seamlessly. But like, you're kind of getting this sense of like someone who is just as disgusting in some ways like other Harkonnens, but he's a little smarter, and like he loves a challenge, and when he finds out that like that one soldier isn't drugged and he's just being sent in here to potentially kill him, and it's such a great moment because like it's always cool when like a bad guy isn't afraid, because a lot of times like you get in movies where it's like here's the bad guy, he's similar to the good guy but he's a lot more like cowardly. When you see like he is also like welcoming of a challenge, it immediately raises the stakes because that the moment he's going to get set against Paul, he's not going to hold back, and that pays off later. But you get him, like, even moments where it's like someone's trying to, like, I think shock the other soldier, and he's like screaming at them to like go away, you know, and like, yeah, screaming at them to go away. And, you know, then he kills the other guy, and you're like, oh crap, this guy is not one to be trifled with, you know, and like it. I only remembered first seeing that because, you know, like I had told Chris a lot that I had looked at this wrestler named Ocean Avery and had said that, oh, he totally needs to play.
Yeah, I can totally see.
And I still told him that even after watching this. Ocean Avery is my brother. Sorry.
I think he would like the comparison. And
yeah, he like the comparison. Yeah, because he loves big
if I could
deal.
compare the dueling of the sword fights in this one, especially the one at the end, it is very much like the Mustafar duel in episode 3, but not as drawn out. But you still get the speed of it. Like, apparently, according to George, when Hayden and Ewan would get really into it, they would be so fast the cameras would have a hard time keeping up with their movements. So something is similar with the way Fade and Paul would go at it, because you know Paul was expertly trained by Gurney Halleck in Duncan, Idaho, and Fade is psychotic. So it really comes to a head.
Yeah, it comes to a head, and the first scene in the arena does a good job of showing the kind of person Fade is, and then after that, when you get the scene of him, like, even meeting the Bene Gesserit, who, you know, wants to also give him the test, you know, again, it has almost like a Game of Thrones like feel, because again, you're getting very political, very much these, like, you know, kind of behind closed doors, you know, even while something gigantic is going on outside, this kind of political scheming, you know, that makes this, because, you know, the thing about the Dune world is that it's a very cutthroat universe. It's a very, you know, everyone, with the exception of obviously like House Atreides and like some other houses, you know, everyone's very much looking to screw someone else over in order to achieve their own, you know, success, you know, even at the cost of others.
Plans, as they say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like the Bene Gesserit, they got their own thing going on. House Harkonnen has their own thing. The Emperor has agendas. The Mining Guild has agendas. Everyone has an agenda.
Yeah, and everyone's fighting against each other, you know, and
the Fremen even have their own agendas.
Yeah, within themselves, their own schisms, which we see towards the beginning, where we see, of course, Paul being ruthlessly declared, like, you know, the Lisan al-Gaib by Stilgar. And you have these moments where it's like Paul, like, denies that he is, and Stilgar, in a moment that seems, I was watching this one YouTuber who said, like, you know, it seems funny at first when he's going to be like, he's too humble to even acknowledge that he is the Lisan al-Gaib. And it seems funny and cute and charming, but then, like, it kind of has this kind of menacing subtext of, like, you realize that means he's going to follow Paul no matter what. Like, it's kind of almost, it's almost like tragic in a way when you kind of start thinking about it deeper. Yeah.
The funny way of it, to think of it, is also like the scene from Life of Brian where he's like, are you the Messiah? No, I'm not. The son who doesn't say the Messiah is truly divine enough. Okay, now fuck off. That whole thing.
Yeah.
Or it's like that. It was like that one episode in Avatar: The Last Airbender where they have like the fortune teller that says, the volcano is going to erupt, but the volcano is actually going to erupt that day. But the Avatar gang fixed it, but then one of the villagers says, like, well, at least the reversion came past. So I was like, no, that's the whole reason you guys were literally about to burn up because her visions weren't true. But it still came true.
Yeah, she said. Well, she says, I think it said she says the town won't be destroyed by the volcano, and they said, well, because of the Avatar's, the Avatar's intervention, it didn't get destroyed. Yeah, Sokka's like, good, you too. I know, that's a good, and it's kind of that, you know, and then you start to get into like the deeper themes, like when Shani points out, you know, when you tell people there's going to be a Messiah, they stop fighting, or, you know, they start waiting for something to happen, and that makes it easier to control of people. And, you know, there's obviously like sort of deeper, like even multi-layered meanings even in just that sentence, you know, or that idea, you know, and it starts the kind of conflict that's going on where it's like we're gonna, you know, the conflict of like victory over the Harkonnens at what cost ultimately, and that's where kind of this emotional, like, what's the right word I'm trying to think, this emotional crisis. the emotional hook for like the whole story begins to form. Yeah.
And then another thing, another battle too. Like whenever they have like the Harkonnens like firebomb the place, or you have like like it just when atomics are involved, you're like, ooh boy. Like I said, just the scale just goes over the top, man. But not in a way where you're like, this is getting stupid. You're like, the stakes keep getting leveled up, and you're like, even if you've read the book, you're like, what's going to happen next, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It lures you in where you're causing like, oh my god, what's gonna? Yeah, like you said, like even if you've read the book and you already know more or less what's gonna happen, they always find a way to like raise the stakes as high as they can. And it's interesting some of the things that like this version sacrifices, because of course in the original book, like Paul has, I mean, you have Lady Jessica. Sorry, I don't mean to get off track. Sorry, but you have Lady Jessica going through the ceremony of like trying to change the water of life, only for the Bene Gesserit to like find out, oh no, you didn't tell us you were pregnant. And of all the versions of Dune I've seen, this definitely is the one that portrays that moment as like the most horrific. When you have the Reverend Mother like even gasp at this moment, saying you didn't tell us you were and even the music like plays it off as like, oh my god, this is terrifying.
Done?
Yeah,
they done goofed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then
what have we done? Yeah.
Good segue into the music, because again, I think while the music in part one was amazing, this again kicks it up to a whole nother level.
Yeah, it kicks it exactly. It kicks it up to like it kicks it up to like notch 12 out of 10. Like where you get like, oh, it knows when it needs to be quiet, and it knows when it needs to be like bombastic. Like, even the part where even like the music that's playing when like Robin, like one of their refineries has just been attacked, and Robin has like the rats are already inside, we're going to war, and you're seeing like everyone taking off. Like even the music that was playing there like was instantly getting me engaged. It was such a small thing, like just all them preparing for war, even though anything Robin does is not going to be, even if you've already read the book, that Robin's pretty ineffective fighting the Fremen. But it's just that moment of like you're just so invested in the conflict because the music is just still keeping up that momentum, and like even the sound effects, even just the sound design of like even the like languages being spoken are just so delicious.
Oh yeah, and on top of that, like that religious motif we explained for the passing of the worm, they took a version of that and turned it into almost Fire Rises style song for when the worm attack at the sandstorm happens, and you're like, damn, you're like,
yeah,
really pumping, man.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you made the Fire Rises kind of. That was from Dark Knight,
yeah,
right?
Because it had that same like that same percussion that bum, 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 bum. All it's missing was like Fremen chanting with it, but yeah. Like I said, though, it was Hans Zimmer definitely shows why he's considered top tier music composers of our era, and again, otherworldly, but not in a I'm being weird for weird's sake. Like I'm not saying he's like this, but Elliot Goldenthal is very operatic and bizarre with his scores. You hear it in his Batman scores versus his Alien 3 score versus his Titus score. It just like it says, but sometimes it feels like he's being extra for the sake of being extra sometimes.
Yeah, whereas Hans Zimmer is a little more. Hans Zimmer is a very minimalistic person. Like he manages to get the most out of the bare minimum, and this is actually him kind of doing that here, but like on a grander scale. Like he's going like big and alien and weird, but he's still incorporating his minimalistic mindset of like I don't have to go too over the top, but I can still be wild and weird, even within my own self-imposed restrictions.
Mm-hmm. So then, okay, I think we should probably start doing individually on character and cast. So I think I wrote it down by people I have a little to say about to the people I have the most to say about. So we start off with the Emperor Shaddam IV, played by the most surprising casting choice of this whole movie, Christopher Walken.
Yeah, when I first heard it, I feel a little bad because like I honestly thought it was like fan casting or like a joke. I mean, I'll say in fairness, when they said Pedro Pascal was going to be Joel in The Last of Us, I also thought, oh, that's good fan casting. I found out, oh wait, that's really what they're going. And in both cases, both actors did a good job. Like again, Christopher Walken, I wasn't even thinking about the fact. Not that I don't think of Christopher Walken as a good actor. It's just he's a very funny presence to me personally, with like some of the stuff he's in. But I completely forgot that that's who he was in here because he had such a great presence, you know, and admittedly some of that's due to Denis, but it's probably also in part due to, you know, even Walken's performance here. He does a very subdued performance where like he pulls off being very frail, but also being like, you know, he's very concerned, you know, about what's going on.
Like, yeah, the Baron's afraid of him too. Like, you still see the Baron give him the side eye at times, like, I don't want to lose my head in front of the Emperor type thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he has that presence. Like, even when he first shows up on Arrakis, and again, you're getting all the great scores of like all the, you know, for the first time, you're actually looking down on the Baron whenever the Emperor's around. Like, the camera's looking down at him. It's never above. Like, it's always looking up at, you know, the Emperor during some moments until, you know, but, you know, again, like, Walken is a very good performer here. He's very subdued. And he, you know, and it's funny, I didn't know the song where he's dancing around. Apparently that song, like, I guess has references to Dune, I guess, according to
On top of
according
that,
to what, yeah.
on top of that, there's some parts where his Walkenisms can't help because it's being him. You can't help but, it's not meant to be funny, but like him in like, oh, you tell me who this Wadib is, and that Walken way of talking, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay.
Uh-huh.
But it makes you
When I
wonder
first,
what
yeah.
made them think Emperor of the Universe looking at Walken. That's the most surprising casting of this whole bunch, to be honest.
Definitely, you know, like I don't know who I would have cast if like someone had
I guess it's supposed to be an offset. I guess it's supposed to be an offset of like how we always imagine these like emperors to be like this, like demanding all powerful, like scheming like beings, and then we see this guy is like, dude, looks like I could just like trip him up with like a banana peel.
Yeah,
And they
exactly.
would like go, and he would go down in like a pile of bones.
He does look like he'd be the father of or grandfather of a Princess Illyrian, the way played by Florence Pugh, Yelena Bonovich, Yelena fame from Black Widow, and she was also recently in Oppenheimer as the oh, darn, I'm forgetting her name. It's the previous lover that Oppenheimer had before he got married, the communist one.
Yeah, and she is, I mean, her costume design is amazing. That's the first thing I noticed. And she also does play very well this kind of, yeah, I mean, you know, she has moments with like the Bene Gesserit from the first movie, the Reverend Mother from the first movie, where they're kind of explaining the plot. Again, more stuff that's not in the original book, but did fit very well into this movie, you know.
Although at least in this version, at least, they actually gave an in-universe reason why she's narrating it. She's like literally just keeping a log, as opposed to like in David literature, she apparently can see the audience. That's like, okay, so I'm just gonna to get you all caught up to speed because we're literally like squashing this, which should probably be like a 4, maybe 5 hour story into like what, hour and a half, 2 hours. What was it? What was the thing we did in the 80s? How long do we have? It doesn't matter. Right? We're running out of time, so I'm just going to catch you up here.
Yeah, just catch you up here. She's not even in the Lynch version that much, so it doesn't even make any sense at the end.
And she doesn't. And the thing is, she also has her own agency where she's able to like tell the Bene Gesserit mother, like, yeah, our other candidate's a complete nut job. You really want him? And say, well, this other guy's getting too dangerous, but so we have to consider all other options. And she's like, your other option, you know, is a complete psychopath. And they're saying,
exactly.
And they're like, all candidates are, you know, viable.
Yeah. All candidates are viable. We just need to find his weakness.
Oh, it leads me to think that the Bene Gesserit themselves are completely insane at this point. Yeah. They've literally just become so, like, I'm just going to say it. They're probably, like, inbred enough to think, like, oh, yeah, this is a clear, well-thought-out idea to get our Kwisatz Haderach.
Yeah, they totally won't come back and bite us.
Yeah. And then, so she's smart enough to recognize that. And she even tells the Emperor about how, yeah, you like Duke Leto, but you know that, you know, by taking him out, if your involvement gets revealed, you know, all the other houses will definitely stand up against us. So he says, yeah, that's why we got to solve this Maudwi problem, because I don't want to keep our heads off of a platter.
Yeah, keep us from being killed. Again, very Game of Thrones, where it's like the political landscape.
Pretty good cast. It's pretty good additions.
Although, now that I'm saying it, his name eludes me right now, but the fellow who played Viserys in House of the Dragon probably would have made an interesting Shaddam, but because he just came off of Viserys, I think he probably would have seemed like a a kindly emperor, and that's not what you want from the jealous man who. Walken doesn't look like the kind of guy to say, "Oh, you're getting more popular than me. Guess what? You're dead."
Yeah.
Actually, now that I think about it, they probably casted him because he did play this like benevolent but also scheming behind the scenes figurehead, like how he did it in Batman Returns.
Yeah,
yeah, that's true.
Although,
actually, yeah.
Again,
So,
because he had
I
that
forgot.
whole
I keep
presence,
forgetting
like,
that's him
hey,
for
the
some reason.
city loves me and all that. I gave to the people, and hopefully they'll give back to me and tenfold.
like he'll say
Yeah.
to everybody, "I wish I could give world peace with a rubber, with a ribbon to the whole world," and then he'll tell everybody, "Remind me to kill that secretary." Basically, like in the same breath. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So he does that really well, and Florence Pugh is very, she's very good in as this role as Irulan, and what else? Sorry.
Okay.
And
So, sadly, like I said, she is just there, but at least her presence is acknowledged enough where she's more of a character than other iterations, at least. I mean, the miniseries did try to give a little more depth to Ilaron, like having her flirt with Paul at the diner scene. The only version that has the dinner scene that was famous in the book.
yeah.
Yeah. So then we go back to the Bene Gesserit, like we mentioned earlier. There's of course, the Reverend Mother is back, played by the same actress from the previous one, where she is.
Also, can I just quickly say that I do love that in this new version they will always have the Reverend Mother like have her face cloaked because they don't want to actually show her actual face. Whereas like the other actually is just like, yeah, no, there she is, the actress we paid for, because she literally wants to be able to be seen on the camera. But this actress is like, no, I know the type of role I'm playing. It's fine. I'm behind mask. It's still my voice.
It still has that behind
acting.
Behind the shadows vibe, like the whole thing. Yeah, Shadow Masters.
Exactly, because the entire point of the Bene Gesserit is that they're manipulating things behind the scene. Why would they want their faces in clear view for everyone?
Yeah, and then
everyone to take notice of.
But again, going back to that candidate prospect, there's the Margot Lady Fenrin, Margot Fenrin, who is like the wife of a deleted character that's in the book, who's like the right hand man of the Emperor.
Yeah,
I think it was cut for time, and it would have been really complicated because he does a lot in the series later, so maybe he might reappear. But he was going to be played by Tim Blake Nelson, the guy who played Samuel Stearns, aka the leader in Norton's Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, and he was also in the Coen Brothers' "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," where he's kind of this bumbling. He was like, "I've done been saved."
And of course, Derek O'Groan, he was the guy in Fan Forsic who tried to open Doom's portal after they said don't go back there, and he's the idiot that gets his head imploded by Doom, rightfully so.
Right.
I forgot that even happened.
No. That he didn't get his head imploded by Doom. He got his head imploded by freaking nature.
Yeah. Okay.
Someone.
Because that's not Doom. That is not Doom.
No.
The fucking
that's Doom Light.
Roger Corman version of Doom was more closer to the comics than that.
Yeah, we'll get.
Hell, even the 2003 one at least had like this flamboyant presence more than this fucking Doom.
Yeah.
At least he talked.
Oh yeah. So but she's played by Lea Seydoux, who we saw in the I think the Bond franchise recently as the daughter of Mr. White. God, her name is eluding me. I liked her too. Shoot. Madeline, I think her name was.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lea Seydoux. Oh, she was in Death Stranding too. Huh.
Oh.
But like I said, yeah, she was Lady Margaret here, and she has, like I said, she only has one scene, but you can't help but remember it's when she goes to like play around with Fade Routha after his big celebration, and she like runs the test on him. Oh yeah, she was also in Mission Impossible as Sabine.
Yeah.
That's where I remember her recently. Madeline, that's the character name I was thinking of in No Time to Die. But yeah.
Yeah. And she immediately kind of has this, when she shows up, I'm trying to think of what kind of presence it is, but it's like, it's a small scene, but you're instantly remembering it, where she's, I guess, trying to carry Well, I mean, we know what she's trying to do. She's trying to carry Fade Ralpha's child. That way, they're part of the Harkonnen, blood, or at least they're keeping the Harkonnens in their, in their domain because now they have a child by them. And she does the test on Fade Ralpha. And the thing is, like, when you of course see that scene, and you realize that Fade Ralpha also survived that, it does kind of it adds kind of like a, I'm trying to think of the right word, but I guess like sort of a sinister implication of like Paul when you start. Yeah. What?
It's like a dark mirror to Paul's situation.
Yeah.
It's kind of like how
to Paul, and you kind of realize with some degree of horror that like the Bene Gesserit have probably done Paul's test on like many people, and many people have probably even already passed. So it's almost like, I don't want to say like it invalidates what Paul survived, because obviously that's a very intense thing to survive, but it's like, I don't know, it's kind of like in Matrix Revelations when it's like you find out that like there were other supposed chosen ones before Neo. It makes the situation a lot hairier, I guess.
What's funny about it is that she mentioned how he seemed to thrive on pain. So we made this running joke of how as it gets more painful, he's like, yes, come on, keep it going. Basically, like he was getting into it. In fact, we made a joke saying he probably keeps a copy of the box on his bedside after that day.
and I probably even said, I need a version of that box I can sleep in, big enough for me to just fucking turn on.
Can I stick my dick in it?
Like the thing is, he like threatens her a couple of times in the thing, but it's clear she has the command of the situation the entire time, which is impressive to say with a guy we saw massacre 3 guys in an arena. So the fact that he's the danger, yet she feels like she's the one that's the most in command, is very impressive, to say the least.
Yeah, and one thing I've always liked about these new Dune movies is that they do the most with like the characters they're given. Like even in the first part, when you have the scene with what's the name of Harkonnen's mentat? I'm kind of
Piter.
Spacing on Piter. You have the scene with Piter and the Sardaukar. Just talking about the Atreides Legion. I don't know what it is, but I love it when like even like little side characters can have like intimate moments by themselves. It always makes the world feel so much more expansive, than rather than just like trying to minimalize everything. I don't know. I hope,
like how Thufir greets Paul warmly when he says, "Welcome to, how's it feel to walk on a new world?" But it feels very like you go to another state and your favorite uncle's there and you go to hug. That's what it feels like when Thua greets Paul.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's this very kind of warm feeling. Yeah, and even moments like this where it's like you have these two characters who, I mean, obviously, Fade is important. I don't know if like the child they have, if that becomes important in any of the later Dune books, but it's it's I don't know, it's just a nice moment, I guess.
When she said, I did my job to take the blood, and I thought, damn, she tested him and got busy with him. Dang.
Yeah, exactly. Damn, he's yeah.
But what's great is later when they go to the Emperor's side and Paul's revolution happens, there's a bit where the Lady Mother tries to take that tone with Paul, and he does that silence, and even she's thinking, oh damn. Although I think the abomination line was originally meant for when she's detected Aaliyah in the original version, but I think just for the sake of like, I'm using the voice on you now, it does feel like, oh fuck, this is abominable.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean the biggest change they of course make to this versus the book is that they don't even have Aaliyah get born, because in the book there's a 4-year, I think it's 4 year. Yeah, there's a 4-year time jump
2 year
between 2 years. Sorry, when they first go to when they first meet up with the Fremen, and then we jump a couple years later, and Paul even has a son in the original book who dies originally when Fade Ralpha attacks the Siege. And, they do away with that, and they do away with, like, Aaliyah being born, which, I mean, maybe it was a good call, because I don't know how they would have done the whole, here's a 4-year-old, but she's, like, super, or a 2-year-old, but, like, she's super intelligent, and because, the Lynch version had to do, like, a little girl, like, walking around, and then being dubbed over by,
dressed like the mother, the Bene Gesserit mother herself.
Exactly. I don't know how Denis could have done that in a way that wouldn't have felt like, kind of silly. If they would have had to do like the CGI lips moving while they're, while there's
God, no, yeah. Please, we're done with the days of the fucking highlight Breaking Dawn.
Oh,
Yeah.
and then oh my gosh, but
CGI
you know what's
baby
funny
Johnson.
too? Have you ever, you know that funny meme with the like from favorite
Never, don't
famous
give us another Renaissance name.
yeah,
Yeah.
where there's that two I was talking about TV show moments, and there was like two moments that aligned perfectly. Like it was like from Beverly House, like the Housewives or something, where they're like pointing and yelling, and the bottom frame is like a cat from My Cat from Hell, but it looks like they're yelling at the cat. Well, they did a
Yeah.
version of that with the Reverend Mother from Lynch's version yelling at Aaliyah from and she's like cackling from behind the table. It's pretty funny.
So funny, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, like I
Yeah.
thought, like the Bene Gesserit, while they were not as involved as they were in the last movie, you could still feel their hand and everything. And like I said, the one scene that Lea Seydoux had as Lady Margot really left an impression. So I have next on our docket, because we can be honest forever. Oh yes, another great big deal. Like we mentioned, we brought up earlier, but here's the big deal: is that we still have Lady Jessica, played by Rebecca Ferguson, stoking the fires of Paul's legend. And you got guys like Stilgar, played by Javier Bardem, really buying into it. Like that's, and it's the danger of fact and belief. Like what you see is factual and what you believe. Like he says, Chani comes from a part of the Fremen sect where they say, yeah, the prophecies are a load of bupkis, but Stilgar comes from the south end where they are super into the prophecy. Like she said, can't you tell by his accent? He's a southerner.
Yeah, and she's very unwilling. And again, it's another change that Denis makes for this movie, where he makes Chani like more resistant towards the prophecy. And it's funny because like there was this other YouTuber, I think his name is Screen Crush, and he was talking about how like it's almost like a version of like Star Wars, where like Padme rebels against Anakin's destiny, and sorry.
Yeah, like if no, not to insult her, but like if Padme was a little more smarter about handling the fall.
Yeah, exactly. Wasn't so motivated by feeling. Yeah, because Stilgar is very much motivated in this film by the want to to fulfill this prophecy, and for like something to even though like he's been told multiple times that like this prophecy was written by the Bene Gesserit themselves, like he still needs this prophecy in his life. It's sort of, again, like I said, it feels charming and sweet at first, but then like as the film goes on, you kind of start to realize, oh crap, this is going to really lead to bad things. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting to see how people have different reactions to this. There'll probably be people who are like more spiritual, that'll probably relate more to Stilgar's point of view, like saying like, yeah, if I was in his position, I'd feel the same way, because that's how I feel about my beliefs, kind of thing. And there's probably some people who probably like maybe younger or whatever, who might align more with Chani and her friend's view of like, oh, they're doing the silly prayers and everything, but this prophecy is a way of manipulating them. Like we're a little more clever to fall for such things. Like I wonder, like if you're a person of faith, how you would see the Stilgar Chani dynamic versus if you're someone who's like an atheist, or someone who's agnostic might say like, yeah, I'm more on her side, or you're like, oh, I'm kind of on Stilgar's side. I wonder how that's going to play out in the discourse.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. And like me personally, I'm sort of on the team of like I sort of understand, I do kind of understand both sides, the wanting to embrace this versus being like, cautious about it, and sorry.
But yeah, because some great atrocities have been committed in like the name of like following the Savior. And the funny thing is that people like to say that Dune is a version of the white savior trope, but no, it's actually an inversion of it, to show you how this is going to lead to bad stuff and being an endorsement of that kind of trope.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll say definitely goes to a little more like painstaking, and I can get to this a little later, of the painstaking detail of like almost like when this ended, it seems pretty clear that like, oh yeah, this is bad. What is going to happen? What's potential, or not? Maybe I shouldn't say that it's bad, but it's more aware of like the kind of. I shouldn't say it's more aware, but just it's a little more upfront with like okay, this maybe is not going to lead to good things. What Paul is doing is not. It maybe is not the best. It's not the best that he can be doing, or that he will. This is not the best for the universe in general, but it's taken off, and Paul has now gotten to a point where maybe he can't even really control it that much. But yeah, I can get to that later.
And then Stilgar, people think they play him up for comic relief, but like you said, it becomes kind of sad if you look at it from the angle of like, oh man, he spent his whole life waiting for something like this to happen. That now that he's seeing the signs, his hope has really gone up. Even with some, and he's giving them wins. They're not taking any more losses under like the Harkonnens like they did before. And like I said, there's a scene where she's explaining it, and he says, "I don't care what you say; it's what I believe." Like he says, but almost in
Yeah,
in tears,
defiant. Yeah,
but he's saying like this is like he's the one. And yeah, at first it starts off funny with the oh look he's so humble he wouldn't even admit it, but now it's going to the part when they all raised their knives in the southern siege when the fundamentalists are agreeing to go with Paul in the end. Yeah, it's like they're with him 100% of the way, but you don't know if that's a good thing or a tragic thing depending on your point of view.
yeah. Like they even call it a holy war, just like the Crusades or something like that. And it's something where it's like, yeah, you do not know where this is going to end, but it does seem like one way or another it's going to be bloody. And Paul even foresees this in the first movie when he sees like this possible future where he's seen like gold armored soldiers, like on Arrakis and on Caladan, and they're just raising their bloody spikes their bloody knives towards him, and he's just glowering over them, almost in a manner that looks like a malevolent villain, like watching over their henchmen or something like that.
I told him it reminded me of Darkseid overlooking Themyscira during the Zack Snyder's Justice League vision.
Yeah, exactly. It looked, yeah.
And what's funny is, like I said, Jessica even says, because Aaliyah, having drinking the waters of life, has also become enlightened, and she's talking with her baby. Even Derek's like, the minute I saw that she was talking with the fetus conspiring to help Paul, you're like, uh-oh. That's a level of crazy he probably wasn't ready for.
Yeah. I know, and yeah.
But if I were to throw my hat into the whole like faith versus reality, I do think it, as dark as it may seem, it does make sense why they need to have some faith. Like you need to have a goal to attain. Like yes, like freeing your planet is great, but what's to stop from like another house taking it over and doing other methods that would like throw that off? Like, how many times are you gonna do, like, going to free your planet with the intention of having it be independent before it's just a case of like, okay, we gotta free it and then undergo it, free it, undergo it. It's like, but with faith, it's like they can go like further beyond their initial goal to actually hopefully to get to a point where they can actually be able to bring the green paradise that's talked about, which would literally wipe out the spice and eliminate the reason for all these houses to come down here to start up some shit.
Yeah, it's like how the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Revelations people, they like believe that a great tribulation must come, but in the end there will be an eternal paradise awaiting them for surviving and going through these strifes and wars and apocalypses. So I think that's kind of what they're showing with the Fremen, thinking, yeah, we're going to be seeing the green on Arrakis soon if we follow this path.
Yeah.
Not to mention, like, this faith is actually uniting the planet. Like, yes, there's some, like, non-believers, especially Chani is kind of a little bit shocked at this, but when was the last time you actually seen all of Arrakis uniting together to push back all these houses, or even the Empire itself?
Yeah,
and
like,
it's definitely an interesting.
Seen them actually pull this off if, like, they didn't have, like, Muad'Dib leading the charge.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely interesting
because you've already seen them trying to do it their way of being like skirmishes and all that, but it's basically akin to like how they did before. It's basically like someone toppling over dominoes and the guy's going like, okay, I'll just like set the dominoes up again. Whereas Muad'Dib is like, I'm gonna drown this whole place in like chaos and despair, so you can set your dominoes up elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nice that this film does allow both sides, like, kind of basically like it's not a simple thing of like this is just a purely good thing or a purely bad thing. It has its own ups and downs, because I shouldn't have been saying that like, oh, Paul taking, not that, or like, what Paul is doing is like that bad. It's technically, because you're right, it is bringing together like all of Arrakis, and it is like, giving people something. Sorry.
I I do have another point of why Paul is doing it, but I'll say that for when we're talking about him.
And then,
But as you said, like there is a point to the madness, essentially.
And then, of course,
Yes.
Lady Jessica's manipulation could almost be seen as putting her in a villainous territory in this time around, because she says, like, we'll go after the weak-minded and scared ones first, and from there we'll spread his influence and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it does sound bad when she words it like that, but there's also I have played and read and seen a lot of other mediums of different stories where they have to find the weak to like give them faith and religion gets the strongest in people who are weak and think like they have nothing to contribute. But once you implant faith and religion and prophecies into them, they actually gain a newfound strength that makes them actually stand out and set off this chain reaction. It's like if she went after the strong and tried to convince them about this, they'd be like, it's a nice story, but I think I'll stick with what I could get. But she goes to people that like are downtrodden or feel like they have nothing to contribute. They'll be able to contribute by passing the story, passing a legend on of the great Paul Muad'Dib Atreides.
And then on top of that, you have it like I think Lady Jessica, after losing Leto and seeing the potential in Paul, she's writing her own script. I think her plans are separate from what even the Bene Gesserit had in mind. So they're like she's kind of gone rogue in her own sense, saying like I've played it by your rules.
But yeah, because because she did kind of like she was all up for the Bene Gesserit up to a point where it's like for the king, nothing will happen to him.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm like, can we not though? Can we still have this say no, this has got to go down, sister. So make a peace and move on with the next stock we breed you with.
Like I said, they told her like you were supposed to breed daughters, but in your bandit, you decided you can make the Quisok Heterock happen with the males. So, like she was already kind of going against script, but I think this time she's thinking I'm going to like write my own plan within plan to like as payback, because she even tried to take the high road and tell Paul, hey, your father never believed in revenge, but he's like, well, he does, and she figured, well, maybe Paul has a point. So. And it's clear that in the metaphors, that the dreams that Paul's seeing about following someone to the south and a great famine will happen, that's basically, if he follows Lady Jessica's path that she laid out for him, because the lady in the vision is clearly Jessica, it means that great suffering could occur, but it's required for the liberation of the universe, but it seems.
Yeah, it's sorry.
Breaks him on, lets it forward, you can make an omelet.
Yep.
Yeah. Can't make an omelet, breaking some eggs. And it's Jessica and Aaliyah are definitely very are very like weird and out there, but the ideas behind what they're doing are very multifaceted, and very very complex. Sorry, I know that's kind of obvious, but it's
And then Jessica, like I said, but she does have she does go through the trial of the waters of life when Chani's friends and her are writing it as, she's going to drink the worm piss, which is poison, and then when they say she has come back, this is a sign also that the mother of the Lesia Gai will be able to survive this thing, and then even Paul's like, it's not a miracle that you think it is, her kind is trained to like survive poisons, but to the Fremen that are believers, they're saying this is another sign. It's like saying, a virgin will conceive in the desert type of thing. So that's that throws more into the whole faith. But I like how it doesn't point the finger at faith and says you're dumb for believing in this, but it doesn't also endorse it a lot, like saying it could lead to things. So it's kind of like
sorry, what Dune is at its core about is it's not necessarily like it's not anti-faith and it's not like anti-politics, but it does sort of breed this idea of like the danger of like mixing the two together, like mixing together. Because even like Jesus Christ has his own line of like, give to God the things that are God's, give to Caesar the things that are Caesar. It's like this idea of like, you have to keep, faith can be good, politics can be good, but they can't be melded together. And that's kind of like, even when you see like the Sardaukar who are like, being blessed while they're also it also seems like they have a definitive like military functionality, like they are very scary, and they have like human sacrifices and stuff, because like yeah, sorry. It's not so much the idea that like, Dune is not anti-religion at all, but it's just against the idea of like, or at least it contemplates the idea of like mixing religion with politics and the things that come as a result of that. So yeah.
Yeah. So, like I said, so I think so. Depending on how it is, you might see Jessica going into Mama Bear mode, or if you're in the other end, if you're like Shawnee, you're saying, "Oh, she's going Palpatine in this road." But I think again, each interpretation will be different according to the viewer. I feel like sometimes you'll
Yeah.
be. I think if I had to gather from Derek, he understands where Jessica's coming from, and when Paul drinks the water and he sees that girl on the beach who's revealed to be an adult.
I enjoy joy of all things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those eyes.
Surprised me too.
You
Yeah.
can't mistake those eyes. You're like, oh. And again, I have to always remind myself that someone said, I just learned today that Anya Taylor-Joy was married and it wasn't me. So someone tweeted back to that Vader with the cracked visor saying, you didn't marry Anya Taylor-Joy. I did. Yeah. But yeah, like she shows up as Aaliyah and she says, she's sisterly enough to say, I'll guide you in this, Paul. You'll learn some horrible truths, but, you know, in a sort of weird way, Aaliyah is kind of like a different version of the all-seeing Raven that Bran was supposed to be in Game of Thrones. And I think about it, but not as robotic.
Yeah, but more like kind of all-seeing, but like also with that underlying compassion, towards her own brother.
Because
Yeah,
the idea is that the waters of life carry all the collective memory, genetic memory of all the Reverend Mothers of the past. So if you give that power right away to someone who isn't even born yet, and they're born with that thing, they're kind of. I think that's why she's referred to as the abomination in the text.
yeah, because she knows everything already. She's already being born caught up. So anything she adds to her knowledge, will only just make her, like a million. Like she'll already have the potential to be smarter than even the smartest Bene Gesserit or Reverend Mother. Yeah.
Yeah, and that sounds uncontrollable. So then. Let's go on to the Harkonnens, because we find out that Lady Jessica's parentage comes from the Harkonnens. She's the daughter of Vladimir Harkonnen, who once again is played by Stellan Skarsgård in an amazing way. Even though there's less of him in this movie, but I still think he leaves an impression.
Yeah, he leaves an impression when he's there. Visually, he has a very.
I would say his threats to one of his nephews about like wrap around Arrakis as if you're wrapping your hands around its throat, or I'll do it to you.
Yeah.
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 And I sit there like, I believe he could do that.
Yeah. Because when you first see him, you see him like just floating out of the tub, and like everyone else, and like the women who are like there, like tending to his needs, are like now dead in this corner of the floor.
Broken too.
Yeah.
Like he went kingpin on their ass, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you don't even see what happens. You're just hearing the screams and hearing the thudding, and you're like, even Raban's like nervous to go into the room. He's like, oh no, he's in one of his moods. And then he opens the door, and you see him, and he's saying, I thought I told you to, keep Arrakis in check.
Yeah. Tighten your grip, or you'll feel mine on your neck. Yeah, I think that. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
I think that's his line. Yeah.
And then
very cool.
And then of course the Baron, of course, that scene when he's on Giedi Prime and he's like telling the people of Giedi Prime, here's your next hero, because we learned in the books and even in the miniseries that the idea is that to make Raban seem like a cruel and crazy leader that is ineffective on purpose. I mean, Raban is just a pawn to him, and that Fade Rotha was always meant to be the next step in the Harkonnen legacy. So poor Raban was always being stepped over, even if he did his best.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and that's kind of how he feels. Like even Batista kind of plays him that way, of like this sort of frustrated, desperately trying to show that he has, he has some kind of like worth, even though he knows he will never impress, the Baron, no matter what he does.
I was in Guardians of the Galaxy series. He was an Elvis. Son of a bitch.
Yeah, like hell. Like I said, like the scene where he's like trying to intimidate his own, men into sending everybody after them. They're saying there's nothing out there. He's like, oh yeah, he kept on like smashing gun. People are constantly trying to show like I can be as scary as my uncle, but it just makes him look, even more ineffective to the Baron.
Yeah. And to the point where, like, even when Fade Rotha shows up, like, Fade Rotha doesn't even need that kind of showmanship. He just kicks his ass and just says, kiss my shoe, just like further
Damn.
humiliate him.
You can't help but feel for Ravan. I did laugh at Jeremy John's joke, saying that he's a dick, but you help but feel bad for him. He said the last time I felt that bad for a dick was when Balin Greyjoy got the box.
Yeah. Oh.
The Theon Greyjoy joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. One moment. Keep it going, but yeah. About the Harkonnens, I'll be right back, real quick.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So again, the Harkonnens are they're very similar in some respects to like the way George Lucas like even portrays like the Empire in Star Wars. Like the Atreides are very like together and they want to help each other out. It's same with the Fremen. But the Harkonnens are always trying to screw each other over. They're always trying to push one of them, the others, to the side. That way they can enjoy all the glory. And just like have like every time they have a thought, it's always like, how do I gain power? Why did you do to this? Like they clearly do not like each other. That's just clear. The only time they can be united is when they're all in fear of being beheaded possibly by the Emperor when he first shows up, and they're all having to answer to him. But you have the Baron, who's like the basically the major domo, the dom. Then you have Robin, who's the right hand man, and then you have Fade Ralpha, who's just just an immediately intimidating force. And then you even have the other Harkonnens that we see during like the arena scene, who are like dancing and like very much playing into like the the ego of like the Harkonnens, because they are very prideful and I'm trying to think of what they're very much about. Sorry, trying to think of the right words, but it's like they are very much
sadistic.
Yeah, that's pretty that hits a nail on the head. They're very sadistic and they get away with it because they just have they can get away with being the kind of people that they are because they just have that much influence. Like they basically do not care about anything. I mean, we know from the beginning that they're even more wealthier than the Emperor himself. And it's kind of this almost Tolkien-esque, the cautionary of like what greed does to humanity. Like they're the ultimate embodiment of like greed, seemingly in this universe. Whereas like the Atreides are more an embodiment of like nobility, and like and then you have the Fremen, who are just like the ultimate embodiment of just like kind of living in a certain way. Just living with like harsh conditions and such. Sorry.
So yeah, the Atreides would be very much like if you seek peace, prepare for war, whereas the Harkonnens are much greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
Yeah, exactly. Greed is good. Greed is And I remember even the book has like this philosophy of like the Harkonnen coin is hate, because the Harkonnens can't really motivate anything based on love. Everything with them is about purely like pleasure or stuff like that. Like they don't actually love anything, because even Fade Ralpha in this movie, like he probably got seduced by by Lady Fenrig because of it was probably more had to do with like pleasure than any kind, versus like when Duke Leto was with Jessica, where that probably had something to do with like genuine love and even like a desire for each other. But the Harkonnens just kind of use people to basically serve their own needs, and like basically everything with them is kind of transactional. Like even that's the reason why Lady Jessica even can forget that her own father is Baron Harkonnen, because he probably didn't want to spend too much time with her at the very beginning. He's basically a very deadbeat person. Sorry.
Yeah. So seeing Fade in this version of the movie, especially after seeing the 84 version, was a little bit more interesting. In that, because at least like with 84, it felt like all they had was like, okay, we have Sting as one of the Harkonnens, and we're just gonna lead off with that. Let's at least get him in as little clothing as possible, just for the ladies.
Yeah.
We very little hope that we're gonna get a lady audience in a movie about like milking a smooth cat to survive.
Yeah, so much random weird stuff.
Whereas
milking a cat to
the new
survive.
one we have, we do have someone that actually does know how to be smooth and suave, but he instinctively chooses not to prey into his vanity. He's more like bloodthirsty. He wants like the thrill, the action, the thrill of like being killed in battle. He just wants like blood for the sake of blood.
Yeah,
and
he's almost like
that
Lieutenant Dan. Yes.
kind of mindset is definitely anti Paul, and so having set up a character like that is definitely feels more payoffish in this version as opposed to 84, where it feels like Fate literally is nothing to Paul in that version, who can literally just like turn like the skies of Dune into like a raining storm cloud and just like turn a spice into nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
And here comes this like pretty boy say like, I'm gonna take on the so-called Muad'Dib. It's like, and you are supposed to be again?
Yeah, who are you again? Exactly. And they don't even, like, the 84 version doesn't even have the arena scene where he proves his,
Yeah, shit, even in this version, it's Fade's command who, like, wipes out one of the Sieches.
Exactly.
So, obviously, there is a little bit more
and even Fade has
for Paul to have against him.
Yeah, and even in this version, we see Fade's, like, military tactics as well. Like, we even see him brutalizing other Fremen, and he has basically his Darth Vader moment where he even admits, like, I don't actually care about whatever information you can give to me. I just want to hear you scream, because he's just that much of a freaking psychotic sadist, you know? And, like, he just has and he has a very scary premise, and he is the contrast to Paul, because he very much is willing to rule. He fights basically for the sake of fighting, you know, for the sake of shedding as much blood as possible. And in many respects, that's kind of what makes him scarier than any other villain, because a lot of the other villains are just blatantly greedy, but Fade is actually is almost unstuck. He's almost like Michael Myers in that regard, in that there's almost very little humanity you can actually use to like appeal to him. But he's also more dangerous because he's like a tactical genius, you know, or at least he's tactically smart enough to, you know, get the jump on Paul and even bomb the site, you know, and blow up the water. Yeah.
And yeah. I will say I definitely did dig the Harkonnen Getty Prime in this version, where like they apparently have this black sun that will like discolor everything. Like
makes everything
where,
black.
like, the Harkonnens fireworks are pretty much look like ink blots in the sky. It's like you can definitely tell that Denis really has the idea. It's like, okay, if I'm gonna adapt Dune for the big picture, I really need to lean into almost like kind of how Jodorowsky was going to do it, but definitely like have meaning to like either like lack of color or color thereof.
Yeah. Talking about the Harkonnen arena?
Yeah, the Harkonnen home planet Gendy Prime. You know, when the sun comes up and it's a black sun, yeah.
I believe it was done in infrared too.
Yeah?
Yeah, they said it was shot in infrared cameras. That's why it shows up that way. I think they shot real smoke into the air, and that's why on the infrared camera it catches that weird, like, splattering of the fireworks.
Oh, cool. That's cool.
Yeah, we were also talking about basically Fade and how much he actually had an actual purpose in this movie, as opposed to just be like, oh, hey, we're also going to have Sting as Fade here. What is he going to do? Him. I don't know, wander around in the...
Yeah, Sting's acting career never recovered.
And how it felt like, yeah. And I also did feel like there was no point for him to have this final bout with Muad'Dib in that original David Lynch film, especially when Muad'Dib had become so powerful that he could have literally just like started up like rain cloud storms all over Arrakis to wipe out the desert. And it's literally like this. Here comes this like ginger nobody that's coming to challenge him. And also, feels like and you are supposed to be who again?
Mm-hmm. Another funny thing about Raban is that he has a rivalry with.
Just like
is that he has a rivalry with Gurney Halleck.
Yeah.
And because he's the one that gave him that scar. He even says so in the backstory. And it's funny that in a way, Dave Bautista and Josh Brolin are playing reverse roles about a man who had his family murdered, who wants nothing but vengeance against the one that wronged him.
Oh my God, that's right, isn't it?
Oh, I did That didn't come to my mind until now.
Yeah, because Josh
But yeah, so in this movie definitely gave a reason for Fade and Paul's final showdown to actually have merit, because not only is Fade kind of like hit the anti-Paul in a way, but he also did kind of like kill a lot of Fremen, and also kind of like just without like even warning or reason, just like blowing up sietches. It's like, why? It's like, I don't know. It's pretty much a big ass target. Of course, the Fremen would probably huddle in there like the rats they are. So just blow it up.
yeah, on top of that, even the Baron comments on using artillery, because that's like an outdated form of, since he said it's our world that turned into theirs, that no one uses artillery anymore with like shields and stuff. So that's why him using an old outdated thing to, it's like people saying using bow and arrows against a nation that doesn't have anything to protect against that, to like sort of sneak attack them. So when he used artillery shells to take care of the sieges, that was like very brutal. And like it says, you can tell he gets a kick out of this, because even after one of Chani's friends stays behind to like hold off the Harkonnens, when she's brought for the interrogation, he wants to know exactly where they go, and she's not gonna say anything. But he knew that, and he just wanted to be there to like torch up a few Fremen.
Yeah. Just basic, yeah, exactly. And that I was telling Derek, like, that's kind of what makes him so menacing, is that unlike every other Harkonnen, there's kind of nothing you can like really bargain with him with, because he's such a lunatic, and he's such a killing machine that like really there's nothing that you can like use to like, yeah, exactly, that you can like use to like threaten him with, and that's why he's such an interesting threat.
Kind of like the Joker in The Dark Knight, when Batman is doing everything he can to find out his information he wants to, but he even says, "There is nothing you can do to me. Nothing you can do.
You have nothing to do with all your strength."
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, that's the thing that makes Faye dangerous. And also, what's funny about the Baron is how there is one moment where he actually does not look imposing or powerful, and it's right after the Emperor shows up and kind of gives him a bit of a thing for screwing up this Maldeep situation, to the point that it required his ass to come out here, that he has a solder car cut him off from his, I think after his near death with Duke Leto, he needs a breathing apparatus now.
Yeah. To like.
Yeah.
And then you see him on the ground, and there's a moment where he looks up at the throne.
He sees the throne. It's like, poor Baron. Well, you see, he's so close yet so far away.
Exactly, it's reach. And,
yeah.
And even my friend Alex told like.
I will say though, it's more. I feel like it's more satisfying that Paul did actually give the final stab to Baron. Like, I know that's probably not how it happened in this book or the Lynch version, but it's like, why would we send like the little girl to kill this fat beast monster?
It has a weird payoff in the sequels. That's why.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Where she becomes
get
like,
into it, but
it's literally the son of a bitch's fault that Paul's father is dead to begin with.
Yeah. Cinematically, it's more fulfilling to have Paul be the one to stick the Baron.
Yeah. And even have the moment where it's like it's again like this moment that's like almost kind of in a weird way, like I don't know what the right emotion to be to. I don't know what the right emotion is, but it's like even to have this moment where it's like Paul, where like the Baron Harkonnen only finds out that he's related to Paul literally seconds before dying. I don't know if like you'd call that tragic or you'd call that like ironic or poetic or irony. Okay, yeah.
As the Penguin said, cruel irony or poetic justice. You be the judge.
Yeah.
And oh man, like I said though, I couldn't help but feel for the Baron in that moment. Like, it's funny, he's so intimidating and scary this whole movie, yet in that 1 second there's like a moment of vulnerability. He's just this pale old man at that point. He's no longer the big scary guy who orchestrated the downfall of Atreides.
Yeah, and it's kind of builds into like this theme that Dune almost has of like anyone can kind of be humbled, like literally any kind of powerful force can be humbled, and that even is like even the Sardaukar, in this are very, basically like, they're this very threatening force, but then you suddenly bring in the sandworms and they're basically nothing, at this moment.
I thought the Fremen handled them very easily to my. I know they're good fighters. Duncan mentioned that, and we all know that they gave him a bit of a slip in part one. It did kind of feel like the Sardaukar were different because you had the Harkonnen speaking English, and the Sardaukar speaking this foreign tongue. Yet in this movie, and I don't know if it was still Harkonnens being disguised, Sardaukar disguised as Harkonnens or actual Harkonnens. They were speaking an alien language and being brutish, and all the Sardaukar were speaking English. I don't know if there was like a big change between movies, but I did notice that a little.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, yeah, that's kind of true. Like the Sardaukar are now speaking. I don't think they speak a word of like their like the alien language they had in the first Dune. But yeah, that's interesting.
I think they kind of reserved that. I think they kind of reserved that for themselves and for like more religious ceremony purposes.
Well, it's like how Batman.
Like, even like the when these movies open up with like saying like the power of spices, power over all, it's like the weight of those words are important to speak in their native tongue.
Yeah, in fact, that's a clever way of them rewriting "He who controls the spice controls the universe."
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, the only thing is they never rewrote the "Spice Must Flow" line. That's the only thing, because even the miniseries had the "Spice Must Flow," even that came from the Lynch version.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Fade got when he got pissed. I like how he got pissed off at the Baron for saying, "You knew that he was on drugs. He could have killed me." Yeah, well, I had a feeling he'd prevail, but it was a test for him to say like, if he prevailed, he knew he was right to place his faith in Fade being the next Harkonnen line, and if he died, well, he called the weakness from the bloodline. So
yeah, it's like in the Star Wars Darth Bane trilogy when like Darth Bane like fights this like man that his apprentice Darth Xana has been secretly training, and he asks, "What if your apprentice had killed me?" And she says, "Then I would know you're an unworthy teacher." And then he turns off the lightsaber and he's like, "You've learned well." Yeah, it's kind of that same idea of like he was. Obviously, if like Fate had died, it would have been like, well, I guess you weren't worth it. But if you've survived, then yes, I know my faith in you is 100% justified, and I'm not like coddling you.
And I like how Fade, on one hand, is pissed about the poisoned soldier coming to him, but also he seems to be like finally a challenge.
Yeah. It's like he's of two minds. Like he doesn't like being betrayed, but he also likes the fact that he can prove how much of a badass he is, I guess.
And then and I like how he says when he kills the last Atreides guy, "You fought well, Atreides." And later when he's fighting Paul and finally meets his end, those were his last words to Paul.
Yeah, you fought well.
On top of that, it's so funny how when he finds out that Paul is his cousin, he seems to be like, "Cousin? Oh, this got interesting."
Yeah, exactly.
It's like even that like revelation doesn't face it. It's like, well, the Bene Gesserit are always lurking around doing double deeds in the shadows, so it was bound to happen, I guess.
Yeah,
bound
to happen, I guess.
I just here for the fight.
You know who else Fade reminds me of all of a sudden? He also reminds me of Daemon Targaryen from House of the Dragon, now that I think about it.
I could see that totally. he's the of like of like a family of like kids that are like kind of spoiled. He's the one who's like trying to prove his worth and has actually even gone the extra mile to prove that he's the biggest badass of them all.
Yeah, a bit of Daemon mixed with who's the one that lost his eye again? Shit.
Oh,
Aemond?
Aemond, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like Aemond. Yeah, the Fade is like Aemond, like a mid.
Aemond with David's.
Yeah, a bit of a mid stage between Aemond and Aegon. I mean,
yeah.
not the Daemon. Yeah, Aemond and Daemon down there.
Aemond, Daemon, yeah. George R. R. Martin's names are confusing. Sorry.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, but oh man, like I said though, I love that Fade's finishing blow comes the same way Paul and Gurney's shield spar went. Like, I got you, yeah, but look down. You would have joined me in death.
Yeah. And that was even in the Lynch version, and it's funny because I'm trying to remember if like the book made a point of that, of like Paul kind of learning from his mistakes and like being the one and delivering the final blow that would have killed him when he had he been really fighting Gurney, but now actually slays his foe in this last moment because his foe wasn't aware.
On top of that, Gurney, he mentions how his backstory was how he was imprisoned by the Harkonnens. He fought under gladiator arenas, and it was Luke Leto that had freed him. That's why he has such a undying loyalty to him and an undying hatred of the Harkonnens. That's why when Fade is the challenge champion for the Emperor, Gurney's the first guy to say, "Please, please, let me be the one to fight this Harkonnen." And even Paul, like you told me, Paul had a monologue like, "Oh man, if only Gurney knew."
Yeah, if only Gurney knew that I was secretly related to the Harkonnens myself. And it's almost funny because in a way there's almost I'm also sitting on the right word here, but there's almost like a poetry in the fact that like Gurney Halleck doesn't get to fight Feyd-Rautha, yet it's actually his moves that lead to Feyd-Rautha's end. The move he taught, or at least the wisdom he passed on to Paul, that lead to Feyd-Rautha getting killed. It's kind of
In a way, Gurney did kill Feyd.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, and plus he got to have his fight with Rabban. Go on, Derek.
It kind of reminds me of like. I was gonna say it kind of reminds me of like in Kill Bill, where Elle discusses how like their master Pai Mei took out her eye, so in response she decided to kill Pai Mei, and his last words like you will know that your demise will come, and she says the word of old man is worth less than nothing to me. But of course the punishment to her is that the other eye gets plucked out by the very arm that Pai Mei took from Beatrix to say that this arm of yours is mine, and I want it to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
So it's literally because Pai Mei had her strengthen that arm. It's literally like Pai Mei's retribution against Elle.
Yeah. So he does get to kill Rabban in this version, whereas in the books and in the other versions, Rabban is killed off screen or he's taken out by Fremen rather than Gurney, because I think Gurney made it a point to say Rabban gave him that whip scar that he had from years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, Feyd, Austin, people say this definitely got Austin Butler out of just being the Elvis guy.
Yeah. Because now he's like actually a terrifying force this time around instead of exactly. That was part of the joke I tried to open it up where I tried to do the Elvis song as
Feyd-Rautha would sing it. Chris Stuckman said that Feyd-Rautha kind of reminded him a little bit of Frieza in this version too. I'm like,
I can see that. Yeah.
I also said this. Final Fantasy had just come out, so this is in my mind. I said, oh my god, Austin Butler, if they ever, for whatever reason, decide to make a skip straight to 7 and make an FF7 movie featuring Sephiroth, I'd put him on the short list of guys to possibly play Sephiroth.
Yeah. Him or the guy who played Aemond in House of the Dragon, because he already kind of looked like Sephiroth anyways.
He got that fairy feature, yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, so that brings us to the heart of this movie. We have all these machinations and all these political machinery, but that's nothing without the heart. And the heart of this whole thing is Chani and Paul's relationship really naturally blooming. It doesn't. I think some people would say the romance kind of feels like out of nowhere for some people because it's like I expected a desert epic, and here we got romance stuff.
Lovey-dovey kiss.
Kind of like Titanic in a way.
Let's just say this romance that's happening here is what George Lucas wishes he could have pulled off in Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, definitely what.
Exactly. The kind of loving but also like ultimately tragic, love story that feels very authentic, that's a thing. It's not simply it feels like a love story written without like too much of like emotional interference on part of the writer, because I know the problem with like any writer, and I say this as a writer, is that you become so convinced that these characters should be together that you kind of stop like looking at things logically, and you just start writing with your heart instead of your brain.
Yeah.
And I'll admit with this one, it felt very natural, and it also fed into the themes of the story, because inevitably this is torn apart by, the fact that Paul is becoming this person. He's becoming both a religious and a political spearhead, and that eventually it's a perfectly done tragic romance that that doesn't feel like it's too overly emotional, because that's the problem you always get with any love stories, when it kind of feels like, because when it's like a tragic love story where it's like, oh no, we can't be together, and now we have to spend like 10 minutes moping or something like that.
We're not going into YA territory.
Exactly. It's like, this doesn't work out, and we're just moving on with the story, and it was refreshing and nice to see this relationship play out this way. I mean, when it starts off, it is very cute, with him having moments where it's like, oh, well, I read in a film book that you're supposed to, and then Shawnee giving him a look like, oh, shut the fuck up, I know what I'm doing here. I actually live out here. I have to physically do this in real life. I didn't have to learn this from a film book. You spoil a little bit, yeah.
Or your walking with rhythm is you're supposed to walk with rhythm, but the film book said, "Hey, I live with the worms, so who would think knows better?"
Yeah, exactly.
Like on one hand, she's like, "Yeah, he's an outsider. He's like the other people who know different that persecute us," but she sees something in him that she likes and respects and admires. I think she senses a difference in him, a kindness almost, that's a delicateness that's almost like alien from all the harsh colonizers they've had before. And when she says her constant to him is just don't ever change who you are, like, that she fell in love with Paul Atreides with Usul. She didn't fall in love with Muad'Dib or this larger than life figure.
Yeah, and it's appropriate that she calls him Usul the whole time. Like in her eyes, it's just it's more worthwhile to be a pillar. Like, I guess if you're to view this like turns like a community, just to be something that holds a community up, not being something that like is above everyone else. It's like that's why it's kind of it's fitting.
And
that she calls him that.
On top of that, she tells him not to change. She also they do really back. He does genuinely care for her. Like, he keeps telling her, "I will love you as long as I breathe." That's like his through line all the time, and like he has visions for her. Like, his first thing to do is call out and concern for her, especially when the artillery bombing of the Harkonnens happened. So like, and it doesn't feel like a forced like, oh, well, they ended up together in the books. Let's try to like just make it run along. It's like you kind of feel the chemistry building between the two, and that Zendaya's charming and Timothy Chalamet is just pleasant. So that's what makes it work, because if those two didn't connect at all, doesn't matter what they filmed around it, it wouldn't have worked. But the fact that it did, you really feel it. So like when the big turning, I thought it was cute when she mentioned how his secret feminine name is Usul. Then she has one that translates to Desert Spring, which he thought it was cute. She says, "No, it's stupid." She laughed about it.
I hate it.
Yeah, she prefers Chani. Like, oh yeah, I prefer Paul. Yeah, but yeah, and sadly, that figures into the prophecy line when they say that he had to go through drinking the poisoned water of life, and her part in it is to revive him with her water.
Yeah.
Even she tells her, "I'm not going to be doing this this prophecy shit," basically, and then why would you let your son do this? And Jessica, not having any of it, does the voice to make him cry so she can say the prophecy fulfilling and bring him back.
Yeah, and it's kind of this moment of like, it shows her caring, and it's again one of those moments that's like kind of multifaceted, because on one hand it's kind of sweet to have it be like, oh, Shawnee saves Paul, but the context of it is like kind of menacing, because it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like something that's, and it kind of shows like the level of like manipulation that even like Jessica is kind of imposing at this moment.
On top of that, you could argue that the Paul she fell in love with was the last time she saw him was before he went south and anything like that. And Paul has to step into his role as this, the awakened sleeper, having to, he has to. It's not that he wants to, but it's kind of like the deck is.
It's just
that's the hand
deck
he
is
was
stacked
dealt.
against us. Yeah.
So, and that's from that point on. That's when Chani looks at Paul differently for the rest of the movie after his death and resurrection, so to speak.
Yeah. And it's at that point that everything takes a turning point, and that's when Chani becomes more militant of like, I'm not fighting for Paul, I'm fighting for my people. I'm not fighting for a prophecy, I'm just fighting for what's practical in my eyes. And there becomes that, kind of slight rift between them that seems like it's been amended when Paul says, "I will love you, till the end," and he says that right before he proposes marriage to Rulon.
Oh, the theater was hurt when that happened out loud.
Yeah.
Like, I heard a few gasping, wow, when he tells her, "I love you as long as I live." Then he goes to the Emperor and says, "I won't kill you, and if you give me your daughter's hand in marriage." We're like,
yeah. Oh, wow.
But then again, Luron was always meant to just be a figurehead for Paul
Yeah.
because his true love and alliances lie with the Fremen. And, oh God, when he said I'm allegiant to the Fremen and to you and everything, I thought, oh my God, this sounds exactly like Anakin's "I will not betray the Republic." My loyalties lie with the Chancellor and with the
Yeah.
Republic and with you. Like it reminded me a lot of that speech. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, it is very similar to that. And sorry, what is it? And yeah, and like it's even powerful to have the last moments be like, every other Fremen is like running off, and ironically, the only person who's not running off in fanaticism is the person Paul loved the most. Instead, she's just calling a sandworm to go back into the desert with her future kind of unclear as to where it's going to go from here. I mean, I'll admit I haven't read Dune Messiah, so I don't know where her future is going to go, but yeah.
I know that, yeah. So people say it is weird that they ended that way because in the book, the last lines that Jessica tells Chani is how history will remember us as wives.
Yeah, because like we're the actual things that are we're the ones who have like actual meaningful relationships, not what Paul is setting up with like the Princess Arulon and stuff. That's just for showcase and political alliances. What we have is something special, and it is kind of a sweet notion because like I mean, what Jessica's talking about is like her relationship with like Duke Leto, and like we have something special, but it's like now this one ends with Shani wandering into the desert, and it creates and it definitely leaves it on a much less on a much I mean because even like the Lady Jessica, like her last lines are basically saying, oh, here's a holy war about to happen, and we know how scary holy wars can get.
Yeah.
And it ends on a much more scary note.
It's almost like
maybe not scary, but
it's almost like Yoda's begun the Clone Wars has. It's like begun the Jihad has, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and it even and it's even comparable to that because the final shot the second to final shot in the case of Attack of the Clones, and even this to a certain extent, the second shot is a bunch of people going off for war to basically not colonize the rest of space, but wage a war in the rest of space.
Now I'm imagining the Imperial March being played at the end of that scene.
I could have seen that.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that. And then, oh man, but like I said, you do feel for that fall. And like I said, it's not that Paul betrayed anything. It's just the machinations of the political system was stronger than what they had, and it's just like he know what he had to do.
Yeah, exactly. It's like even when he realizes that he's part Harkonnen, and he says, let's be Harkonnens. And it's just this idea of like, it's just the hand we're dealt. We just have to embrace this side of us one way or the other because there's no getting out of it.
To beat monsters, you gotta be one yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
So, let's go on to, we talked about him the whole time. Let's talk about Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, played by Timothée Chalamet. And it's easily the most impactful character in the movie because this is his saga, but you go into this thinking you're reading like King Arthur or Luke Skywalker's Rise, and only by the end you realize we're probably going towards something darker.
Yeah, much darker and much more, complex and like, exactly. And it's,
Earlier.
exactly, bloodier. And he's a very, sorry, is that what you said, bloodier, or did you, sorry. But, the thing is,
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Oops.
Sorry, the video is kind of distinct a little bit, but what I was going to say is that I feel like my initial viewing of it, I did kind of walk away from the theater going like, oh boy, this isn't going to be that type of story, is it? However, with a lot of thinking, it kind of makes sense that we have to go this route. Especially with the fact that he's been haunted by nightmares of like the end times and like seeing Arrakis is burning even worse than it should be, and seeing Chani die in his arms over and over, and then he finally decides, okay, enough's enough. There's got to be a solution to all this. There's got to be a way to get out of this like never-ending loop of hopelessness. So he takes the water of life, and he has the visions with his sister Alia, who then infers to like, okay, so this is how we're gonna do this, and we don't see what they're planning, but clearly, as soon as he survives and wakes up from that, he definitely looks like he's a man with a plan, and it's basically it. Yeah, think of it. It's almost kind of reminds you have like Jin Pekin 6 who just plunged the world into World War III just so that he could get like the originator of the devil gene to come out and kick its ass and just take away the evil spirit out of the game.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And it's weird to give that comparison, but it really does feel like that. It's like in order, like as I said before, in order to have peace, you must prepare for war, and Paul is definitely ready to like go to war just so that he can like free this planet that he is now calling home, essentially. And it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be clean. It's definitely not going to be free of any religious beliefs or anything like that. It's just he's literally using the legacy and legend of the Muad'Dib to his favor to kind of like psych out the enemies, essentially. Because usually in most wars and most battles, if you have faith that's leading the charge and that faith is somehow succeeding, the enemy will sometimes freak out. It's like, okay, somehow this guy must have powers that we don't even fucking understand one bit. And if we don't understand that and yet they're winning, then what chance do we have? So they'll probably just make messy mistakes, throw out their exploited weaknesses, anything just to get the hell away from this guy that's like literally rising up from the dunes of Arrakis, literally just turning the tide all of a sudden.
Well, yeah.
Or like even like all these like hardened checkpoints and heavy artillery places are falling to this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the scene. One great scene is when Raban wants to be the one to kill Muad'Dib, so he recklessly goes into a situation where he's almost like Batman picking him off, with the Fremen help.
Yeah.
And the one attempt where Raban almost dies, so he like runs into his helicopter with his tail between his legs. But yeah, like I thought it was funny though. I mentioned a joke to my friend who played Lethal Company that when one Harkonnen shot the other, seeing motion, I thought typical round of Lethal Company. But yeah, oh my gosh, like he says, he becomes larger than life. Like he's like Rambo or like other terrorist leader, like really like hero to his people, but nightmare to everyone else. Like the Emperor is saying this Muad'Dib's becoming a problem. The Harkonnens are all like, I thought you said you killed this Muad'Dib, but even even the Princess Hilarions are like, we thought we got rid of the Atreides, but what if this Paul Atreides is alive? What if he does come for you, Father? We know what's going to happen. The Lance Rat's going to turn against the Imperium and all that stuff.
Yeah. Everything's going to fall apart because Paul represents some kind of like other power, some power that's like greater than anyone else's, yeah.
And even he doesn't believe in it himself, but it's when he has that repeating visions and he goes back to Jamis, even though he's killed him, he still has a wisdom to give him, telling him how the great hunters have to see. So in order to be a good hunter, you got to see. And they told him that the waters of life makes you see.
Yeah.
So that's why he went to do something so stupid, because he thought like, I'm already it only happened after the Fremen get bombed and they're losing hope, and he realizes in order to stop these monsters I got to go ahead and become more than they are. And because initially he's against going south because he keeps having visions about how it's going to start a chain of events that will lead to great suffering, and also he keeps seeing Chani dying, and he also sees oh crap, there was something I thought that was relevant to that. Oh yeah, when Jessica's telling him we gave them something to hope for, he snaps back, this isn't hope. Yeah, very very mad.
Yeah.
Right, but even then, he decides he has to go south because, like, his nightmare almost came true, but it was just only Chani seeing a bombardment on one of the sieges instead of like this atomic weapon going off before her.
He even tells
and the fact that his vision came so close, despite the fact that he stayed away from the south, it's like, okay, this is what I'm trying to do is clearly not working. I have literally just have no other choice but to do this.
Embrace the prophecy and embrace his, and basically embrace everything. The prophecy, his Harkonnen lineage, and like
lessons, all that stuff.
Yeah, basically just throw the kitchen sink at everything and just do whatever I can to win this. Damn the consequences or the suffering that comes as a result of it. Sometimes that just has to happen, in order to achieve your goals.
And so, like it says, one line he says is that
And,
power over something isn't just creating it, but also the ability to destroy it. Something like that. He says something to that effect.
Yeah, the ability to destroy the person who can destroy something has a true control over it. I think it's something like that. Yeah.
Like he even told them, like, tell the spacing guilds to fall in line, or else I'll start nuking all the spy spots. The
Yeah.
atomics. I forgot atomics were a thing, so when they mentioned them, I'm like, oh shit, they got atomic bombs.
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah.
And even Gurney's like telling him, hey, these people believe in you. Use it. Use this thing to your advantage. He's like, no, I don't. He keeps on pushing against it, but everyone, his mother, his mentor, everyone's saying, hey, you got a good thing going for you.
Yeah, push towards it, and damn what you lose as a result of that. And in this case, he does kind of lose his relationship with Chani. That's like kind of almost the sacrifice he makes to like fully embrace this prophecy. And I remember even in the book, there's a part where like Paul, I think like they've won against the Harkonnens, but he looks into everyone's eyes and he realizes he doesn't really have friends anymore. What he has is followers, and there's like almost like an existential loneliness in that realization because he's just a god to them, and like he's the only god, and that's just
And it's so funny how he got his name from something as humble as the field mouse that he sees in the desert.
Yeah.
Even in the video,
a field mouse, which they even explain, like, is able to know. I forgot. No, yeah, it's basically carrying water somehow, or sensing the arrival of the sandworms without even needing like worm sign or something.
Well, yeah,
No, it was definitely the water thing.
Yeah, Stilgar mentions how people said don't knock it because they say you want to be the silly mouse, and no, Muad'Dib is wise and patient in our things. He knows the ways of the sand. Basically, he's saying that is a good name because Usul was a good name for his pillar, and the Muad'Dib is good for his little cunning. But also, he said Muad'Dib is wise. He said because they're like, because he's kind of joking, saying maybe I'll pick the name of whatever those little mouses are called in your tongue.
Yeah, and of all the things you can pick, it's like, oh, this one has meaning. Yeah.
And if I would say, yes. So Paul probably thought that he was gonna have like all this handled out in this one moment, but as soon as they said, "Yeah, the houses are gonna fall to you," like he said, like he realized like he really much has to go even further in, and it probably would also involve breaking Chani's heart a little bit. But the fact is that he's doing it just to keep her safe because he loves her so much that he doesn't want to see her suffer or feel any hardship or have to die for his cause. It's kind of like a self-defeating romance in a way. It's almost like he's trying to keep her. Like, if you really truly love her so much, you'll have to accept you have to let her go because she's definitely not going to follow you going on this path, but in the end, at least you'll be able to live and hopefully see this paradise that they're going to fight for.
On top of that,
and maybe someday she'll probably look up and realize that like he did all this at least just for me, and that he really did love me with all of his last dying breath.
Yeah, because the whole thing was about how you're not Fremen. Now, I was born here, you're not, but he keeps insisting how he's learned the culture, he's learned the ways. I think the biggest moment of acceptance is when he takes when he rides the sandworm, and they said he rode, even like one of the Fremen run to Jessica saying that Paul has made communion with the Shai Halu like as it was written, and they said it was a big one, even
the biggest of the bunch.
Yeah, even Stilgar tells him like you didn't have to go that big when he sees the worm approaching. But oh man, yeah, like that's a moment of acceptance where he really is learning their ways. He's harnessing the desert, and he has become, he's lost his regular family. He's lost his world of dukes and house and stuff, and here he has a found family with the Fremen. So he's definitely fighting for them because he's not like, oh, all this is just so I can have my revenge on the Baron and the Emperor. That's a kind of an added bonus. I think he really did believe that these are his people now. Like it's like what Duke Leto told him: a great man doesn't look for greatness; he's called to it. Whether you answer that call or not depends on you. So, he accepts it once he takes the ring that his father gave him to say that, and when he goes to the
because it's a follow up it's a follow up to like his father telling like so, no one like becomes a great leader just by wanting to be a great leader. The leadership is trusted upon him. And it's up to that man to take up that responsibility.
So when he goes to the council and starts like giving a powerful voice and order, you're like, damn, like that is his. He never says it, but that's pretty much when the sleeper has awoken, pretty much.
Yeah.
So when he tells them like, I am Paul Maldiv Atreides, Duke of Arrakis, and I'm doing this for you, like that is like. You could also argue that it's from a certain point of view, it's kind of like seeing pardon the phrasing, it's like seeing a Hitler rally when he goes into his super passions. But if you're on board with him, you're seeing like a great leader that's rousing you, like a William Wallace from Braveheart type thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like everything has like a different side to it. Everything is a two-sided coin. You can view what Paul is doing. You can view what I think even to some extent, like even Paul's interactions with people, you could view as like having different interpretations, like choosing to marry Irulan. You can view this as like, Paul simply doing what needs to be done, or you can view it as like him officially losing his way. And even like, as Chani said, like, I will love you as long as you remain who you are. You could view that if you wanted to. And I think there could be an argument for it as him officially throwing away who he used to be, in order to become something else. Yeah.
He's going back to the world of politics and dukes and everything, bloodlines, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's only so that he can literally systematically crumble it, so that there won't be a problem with the Fremen or Arrakis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like,
so that's what he's going for.
Usually, if you have to be able to take down something, you have to be among them. You have to literally know their ins and outs, and by extension know their weaknesses and how to finally put them down like rabid dogs they've become.
It's like Zemo's line of, an empire torn apart by its enemies, rises again, but an empire torn apart from within never recovers.
Yep. And it's like I said, I think people's view of Paul will vary depending, but you're still very much rooting for him. You're still on his side. It's not like he suddenly turns a turn and he goes from being Ned Stark to Joffrey. No, it's never that.
So yeah, I would say that for coming into what we're probably assuming is going to be Dune Part 3 Messiah, I am for what Paul is going to do, but like I sure hope that like in the end he doesn't forget what he's doing all this for.
Well, like you said, like in Tekken 6, I remember I was like F Jin Kazama for some of the stuff he's putting me through, and you said, trust me, the other games give a rationale that you go, that makes sense. Like I think you said,
especially 8, he makes up for all of his wrongdoings, like in a big way.
Yeah, and then another thing too about Paul that I remember is that I really liked too was when some of the fundamentals are doubting him, when he starts saying things that no one could have told him or him possibly know unless he was the one that they say is coming. Like he knew the name of somebody and how he carried something from his loved one that was gone, and the other guy's thinking no one but the Gisa Ali would have known about that.
Yeah.
And another thing too is when he takes command, like when the Emperor and the Baron are having a little scuffle, and all of a sudden the place collapses and Sardaukar all run into the fog, and they come back dead with Paul the last one standing. You're like, oh damn. And that's when he gives the Emperor his terms, like, okay, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do this, and you're not gonna deal with that. And he's all like, what's gonna happen if something happens to me? We're gonna like glass the place. And he's like, well, you can't do that because we have the spice and everything. And he even tells them like, hey, tell the guys to fall in line, or else I'm gonna blow up all the spice depots. And even by the way, I found out that there's a reason why he says it's a common saying amongst Fremen is when you're about to go into a duel to the death, that when you say, may thy knife chip and shatter, we all know the Chris knife is very important to them because it's the tooth of a sandworm that's important to them. And if your blade is to break, that's basically saying, may you fall in battle, basically, like may you, wishing death upon your enemy, like saying, oh, I hope your blade breaks in the middle of combat, basically.
Yeah. You're completely screwed, and just left to feel nothing but my wrath.
Yeah. So, but yeah, his rise is inspirational, and you never. I think he never loses the human aspect of it, even though he's becoming more than human. He never loses that, so you're still feeling for him. It's not like he becomes Bram Stark after waking up to the One-Eyed Raven, and he's just a computer for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
We sure are bringing Game of Thrones a lot, aren't we? At the end.
Yeah. Well, it's
I mean,
hard
I'll
not
take
to.
your word for it. I haven't really gotten that far. I think I'm still only in season 1.
Oh, it
Oh,
gets
wow.
good.
Honestly,
It gets
to
good.
catch up.
Yeah,
After
it
people
does.
tell you stop there, but I'm just saying, yeah, there's some really good shit. But
And I'm not gonna believe those who say, "Oh well, sorry that the story didn't go your way," but I'm actually gonna be invested in how the story tells it, and then I'll make my decision
it's
for
funny.
myself. Okay?
Liet Kynes, Max von Sydow plays a character in Game of Thrones too, so another connection there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I was saying though, you see that you can see it as like, okay, this is bad or this is good, but Timothy Chalamet's performance keeps you in. There's some people that say they still can't buy him as going from leveling up to leader, and I think your mileage will vary depending on who you are. But for me personally, it was inspiring, especially when he starts like speaking in her tongue, like "Long live the fighters" and giving command. You're like, yeah, this is a guy I would follow. Like, an impressive shot in IMAX is Timothy Chalamet going up to that cliffside and you just see seas of people, and then when he lifts his knife, every one of them does the whole little knife lift, and you can't help but kind of get caught up in that moment too.
Yeah, exactly. That moment of epic solidarity.
Mm-hmm. And oh yeah, and like I said, he does seem kind of defeated, even though he survived his battle with fate, and then he hears that the Landsat will not accept his rule. That when he tells Stilgar and the other Fremen, lead him to paradise, he says that almost in like a, yeah, the die is cast. There's no turning away from this now.
Yeah. I gotta go forward with this, no matter how much it'll break me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And tragic hero.
I did find it.
Too.
I did find it sinister that the Bene Gesserit said like sides. There's never been any sides to begin with.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
There's only been power and who. Yeah.
So there's like, you bitches played everyone like a fool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So yeah, even though the Emperor has been deposed, and Paul is now going to try to set up himself as the new. They're trying to bring peace, like what Leto was going to do. It's probably gone far beyond what even Leto imagined. Because remember, Leto said that desert power here is our key to conquering Arrakis here, and in the end, even though he died before he could see its fruition, he was right.
Yeah.
Oh God, Oh God, I back to the miniseries for a second. When William Hurt was explaining how we ruled Caladan with air and sea power, here we need desert power, and he goes a second time, desert power. And I went, that second one just
Yes,
cracked me up.
yes, Billy, we heard you the first time.
I cracked up when that happened. I don't know why.
Is that your fault that you thought we couldn't hear you because your acting was sucking?
Yeah.
And later when he says, "I'm exhausted by all this politicking," and he said, "Don't give an excuse for your performance." But oh man, there were a lot of great performances in this one. But yeah, you're right. What's next? Dune Messiah. Villeneuve did say he is interested in doing that, and then that'd be the last one he'd direct. And if they wanted to make more Dune movies, it'd be without him. He said because he wanted to finish the story with Messiah. And Messiah was made as a book because people misinterpreted Dune a certain way, and Frank's all, no, this is actually what I mean. And that's why it's not popular with some people, but some people actually really like it too, so it's going to be curious. I knew a reviewer say he liked Dune, he loved Dune Part 2 so much that he's going, I don't want him to do Messiah because I know where it's going to go. But it would be curious to see how a general audience would react.
But does he though? Consider the fact that there's a lot of deviations. Consider there's a lot of deviations in like this adaptation of Dune. Like, how do we know it's not going to go exactly the way it's going to go in Messiah?
It could be like Luke. This isn't going to go the way you think, and like I'm saying is that it is just.
I do know that we are getting a. I do know we're getting another. We're getting actually a Max TV series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dune
Prophecy based on Sisterhood of Dune by Frank Herbert's son, right? Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson, I think, who wrote that.
If they can keep the same production value and look, I think we'll be in for an interesting show.
Yeah.
Well, oh man.
Yes, please keep it at the same level like Apple did with Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Don't go. Oh god, what was the worst? Refraction. I know a lot of you assholes out there are trying to point to the Marvel shows. Don't. I am trying to think. It's okay. I got it. Don't go the way of that fucking Megamind follow up thing that they're going with. They didn't put in the effort. They don't put in the respect. They don't even put in the care. They just didn't care.
Yeah. So, and here's the question: you think they'll, if Messiah goes, do you think they're gonna go as nuts as going with Children of Dune and everything else beyond?
I kind of
with the guy who turns into the Paul's like.
If they want to keep.
Go on, Derek.
Yeah, I'm kind of worried if they keep going with the Dune as like a movie series, they'll go to the point where they're going to adapt all of them, even fans to the Dune books, say, no, do not want to. Children of Dune, that's fine, but do not pass go. No, once you go down that way, there's no going back.
It gets weird.
No,
don't beyond weird.
Yeah, like human hybrid with a Shai Hulud kind of weird, right? Like.
And then on top of that,
I remember seeing that. I remember Jonesy showing me that meme. It's like, okay, here's it. You want to get into Dune? Here's how it is. Dune and Dune Messiah. Read these if you want to be like pure Dune. Read Children of Dune if you kind of want to see more, but it's not gonna be as good as the other ones. Frank Herbert did not write any of these, and then but like his children still had some thought into it, but still, their minds may vary. And then there's like this whole stack of Dune books say, "Do not read, absolute trash."
And then there's some that get weird. Where you're like, if you read this one, you're just gonna go. You're gonna go on an acid trip.
Remember looking at it, it's like, damn. And people, and I thought like Star Wars Legends books got fucking like haphazard and weird, but Dune takes a fucking cake.
Oh yeah. Yeah, on top of that, like I remember someone said, I think even Jeremy was reading his thing. I can't wait to see the other 5 or 6 books. How many books are there? 20 Dune books?
God damn.
I don't think they're gonna go that far. Besides, there's a fan joke about a Dune fan who did a joke about introducing, like, don't read that one, but you can read this one. But you can, people don't. Yeah, and he kept saying that. So do I have to read the sequel books to get the whole story? And they all start laughing, like, read the sequel books. He said, the ones written by his.
Does that mean no? Yeah.
The ones written by his son. Yeah. And apparently, some fans are dubious about the claims. Brian Herbert said that he found a floppy disk with his father's unmade notes for Dunes 6 and 7, because those are the ones that he did, Hunters of Dune and I think Navigators of Dune, I think.
Yeah. And some people think he, yeah.
And he did stuff like the Butlerian Jihad, which is like the whole why they don't have computers, and then they have the House Corino, House Atreides, and House Harkonnen books. I mean, there's a lot. It is such a dense universe, and they can make more, but do we really want him to? Do people? I'm sure the artist people will be like, do we really want him to squeeze it dry though? Because are they going to let the spice just crank it out, and then until there's nothing left? Like, we don't know. But Denis had care. He had art. Brian Herbert did say of all the adaptations of Dune he's seen, this one respected his father's work the most. Even with its changes, he said, "This is the most complete version of my father's vision brought to screen."
I understand.
You were saying, Derek?
I was gonna say, like, I still wonder what Jodorowsky would think of these videos. I think he'd be like, they're pretty good. Could use a little more color.
Yeah. Because he was passionate. That's the thing you love about watching Jodorowsky's Dune documentary, is for a guy in his 90s or 80s, still full of passion, like energy, like a rocket, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like my grandma, he's
actually,
very...
I do think, Dune Part 2 definitely feels like it came closer to his vision, especially with, like, all these, like, wide zoom shots. Like a lot of the times when I watched this movie, I was going, like, this always kind of feel like a little bit like what Jodorowsky was going to try to go for.
I think Jodorowsky
even using, like, the even using like the negative space for like a giddy prime probably fit into Jodorowsky's mindset in like a twisted way.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
and I think I still laugh at Jodorowsky saying I was like a dead man, depressed to see Lynch. Because Lynch is an artist; he's gonna make it work. And I started seeing it, and I'm like, wait, this is awful. And then by other, yes, it's terrible. He says that it kind of brought him back to life seeing Lynch's version falter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that wasn't Lynch. It was probably the studio film that messed him up. Because I said Lynch is an artist, so. But him seeing, because he was like depressed, like they're making Dune, but then when he actually sees it unfold, he's like, wait a second, this is actually bad.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Yes, vindication.
Yeah.
And so people always said Dune was a bit unadaptable, and sometimes say that it holds up, but this is the best we're probably gonna.
But to be fair, once upon a time, people said the same thing for Lord of the Rings.
True.
Yeah.
Now I did.
But now I think we finally
Because
reached
if you
the
just
point
need
where
the right
we can
mind.
pull
Yeah.
off Dune.
I did hear someone say this, and I agree wholeheartedly. The Dune saga, like all the books and everything, would make for a hell of an anime series.
I
Oh
can see
my
it.
god!
Like you don't even have to follow the Villeneuve style, but just like
That's the question, though. What type of anime style are we talking about? Are we going to talk about like maybe shoujo a little bit? I mean, like what's shonen? I'm sorry, Blah!
Yeah.
Shonen where it's like kind of like low level but starts to go up and up and up a little bit, or are we talking about like where it's like really weird, distorted, or are we going like hardcore? Like no, we're gonna go berserk style. It's like okay.
I think I can see it going like this is how I would handle it, like those OVAs from the 80s and 90s type animation, man. They don't do them that
Like
way no
the
more.
Guyver. Yeah.
Like Ghost in the Shell almost kind of vibe,
Like,
or Akira. Oh my god, I can totally see Dude being like either Ghost in the Shell or Akira style.
oh god,
I'd say that. Yeah.
You know they would make the
It's definitely that weird psychedelic weird house that those things did.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like. I love Trigger and Studio Orange and all those current guys, but yeah, this has to be a hand-drawn project for sure. Like I remember for Evangelion Thrice Upon a Time, they actually went through the trouble of going to a Miyazaki museum or whatever, or one of the animation museums that still has one of the last few surviving presses they used to use for animating by hand for a sequence that required Shinji to see things in an old way, like in sketch form. But it was like really well done. I thought, damn, that looks like old school. Like so, a Dune done that way, like it doesn't have to be Miyazaki because Miyazaki's too flowery, too idealistic. I think you're right. A Ghost in the Shell type, not cyberpunk per se, but that kind of hard lines mixed with.
We're stumped.
Oh yeah, but yeah, I think that would work great for a Dune series, and they would make the Baron obscenely fat in anime style if they had to do the Baron that way.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, in fact, it'd be funny.
Obscenely fat, like his head would be half the size of the characters, emphasize like Paul and stuff. Yeah.
And for a fact that Fade Rotha would probably be like Dio from JoJo's.
Yeah.
Because then now that I think about it, Sting would have played a great live action Dio back in the day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but yeah, so okay, Dune 2, back to it. We're going way off the course. We're really inhaling the spice this time around.
Yep.
Oh, one thing we didn't see in this series of Villeneuve is what the navigators actually look like, because Lynch's version and even the miniseries had a freaky ass version.
Yeah.
Even Derek's like, oh my god, I didn't want to know what Mothra 98 looked like, but geez.
Yeah.
It looked like the little green men from X-Men mixed with, the Hellbats from Life Force.
Yeah. Oy.
And then the ones in the Lynch version look like these bizarre fetuses.
Yeah.
Had like those weird like vaginal pig nose smells.
Yeah.
And
Oy.
and you know what would look interesting? They would never do it, but I would love Patrick Tatopoulos, to design what a navigator would look like in a Roland Emmerich version of Dune. I think
That'd be
the
interesting.
closest we got to Roland Emmerich's Dune is Stargate.
Yeah.
Everybody pretty much, because that was ancient aliens mixed with desert. Yeah, yeah, you
Yeah.
got a Fremen type society with the people being oppressed by the.
Oh my God, was Roland Emmerich really trying to push for Dune? But people were like, "Yeah, look, man, buddy, even David Lynch couldn't pull that off. What makes you think you could?" He's like, "You're right. I think I'll just make up my own thing."
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of like Dune is the watershed of sci-fi because it inspired sci-fi with its themes and some plot points. So you say Star Wars borrowed from that. Stargate, like everybody borrowed from Dune pretty much.
Yeah, in some way.
Now I'm looking back at it, I'm like, oh my god, Stargate kind of is sort of Roland Emmerich low rent Dune. Like
Yeah, exactly. It's the closest we'll get.
it's like let's watch Dune. We got Dune at home.
It's hilarious because even that like sprung off to be its own franchise.
Oh god,
Yeah.
right. And Kurt Russell's awesome in that. Tell King, say hi to King Tut for me. How's the line go?
Yeah. Give my regards to King Tut, asshole. I think that's how it goes.
That's a
yeah.
great line.
And they does the teleport and he actually cuts off it. Or no, he doesn't accidentally, he means to cut off a guy's head.
Yeah, Stargate's great too, by the way, if you haven't seen that one. But yeah, I think it might be too premature to say, but this definitely feels like it'll change how sci-fi movies are looked at going forward. I already see. Okay, this is a little pretentious for some people, a little snobby, but some are saying this is the Star Wars killer out there. Which
Star Wars killer.
yeah,
Yeah, I hear that a lot too.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
But to be fair, at least Star Wars can actually have their own video games and theme parks. Who's gonna be going to line to do like a sandworm roller coaster?
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, part of Dune's appeal is that it's such a threatening universe. I mean, but it is a very, threatening, scary kind of dystopia, where, yeah, exactly. It's, it's
They did turn Pandora, the most threatening place in that galaxy, into a theme park.
yeah, but even, Pandora is very, pretty looking, whereas, Dune is purposely not very pretty
sand
looking.
everywhere.
Sand everywhere, and even if it's not sand, it's Gady Prime, where it's a, nightmare. It's
You know what's funny? Going around the internet right now as a meme is this weird ass AI generated Willy Wonka thing that's going on from Glasgow.
Yeah.
Like they made this AI generated ad for the Wonka experience, and then it's like a factory with barely any decorations, like an empty hangar with barely any decorations. This cheap ass looking meth Willy Wonka guy, and at least two Oompa Loompas. So someone made a parody of that with the Dune experience, saying, "I'm sorry that our actual experience didn't live up to the brochure. And the brochure showed like this alien landscape with worms and everything, and you just got just a warehouse filled with heaps of gravel sand." There's your Dune experience.
There it is. Get in there.
Sand and more
The sandworms being like a little slide with just the sandworm shell decorating it.
Oh, it's funny. We went this entire time without talking about the famous bucket.
Yeah.
What?
The sandworm bucket that a few theaters were offering, but Dune.
Yeah. Where you literally have to reach into a sandworm's mouth in order to get the popcorn out. It looks like something that would be in I don't know. I mean, plenty of people make the joke of oh, you stick your hand in, you lose your hand, or something like that. It's just very unnerving way to eat popcorn.
It's like a desert glory hole for some people. That's it. But yeah, if your mind goes right away, it looks like you're sticking your hand into a sphincter or whatever. Someone said, Josh Brolin said, "What if I put milk duds in it?" And people said, "That's even worse."
Yeah.
But I think I agree with Derek though. They could and Alex. They could have made the popcorn bucket be the box. Wouldn't that have been awesome? Like the box that the Benny Gesserit used.
That would have been great.
Walmart did have a Blu-ray set where the cardboard unfolded to make the box, so you can reach for it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
That was back then in the first release. I don't think it anymore.
I had to raise my eyebrow at that because I work at Walmart and I definitely didn't see us selling that.
Or was that another? I think.
So I'm probably just gonna call bullshit.
I know one of them had it where it was the box was actually the cover for the DVD was the box, and you have to put your hand into it to get the disc out. Yeah.
That sounds cool.
Oh yeah, but anyway, so Dune 2 is awesome. I don't know I wonder how this will affect sci-fi movies going forward, but this feels. You know how you say people saw The Empire Strikes Back and they knew everything changed? I think this is how some people are going to feel with this Dune. It might be hyperbolic to say that, but in my point of view, I do feel like we witnessed something that was truly a shift. Like it's like how Star Wars was.
I just say we finally witnessed. We witnessed Hollywood actually finally opening up, because like we had movies technically that came out.
Yeah.
I actually really wanted to see that Lisa Frankenstein one, but I missed my chance. It's like it was there, and it's gone.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow, okay. Didn't even have the courtesy to leave it up for at least 3 weeks.
Well,
Great,
it
super.
it kind of got savaged a little bit for being really first timey for its debut, but yeah. Like I said, they say it'll probably play better on streaming. Yeah, but Dune has to be seen in a theater. You have to be there. It's one of those moments where you have to say you had to have been there, man. It's like how people said that when they saw Empire or New Hope back in the day. You just had to have been there. So I'm glad we live in a day where we can witness Dune 2 and really enjoy it the way that we did. And I'm looking forward to seeing this again. And I really am curious to see how Dune Messiah gets made, if it does.
Yeah.
And,
I mean, it has to at this point.
oh,
Yeah, because this is already making good money on its first weekend.
Have you literally looked at Rotten Tomatoes? I literally took a screenshot of it and shared it with Jesse. It's literally like the first time I've ever seen the audience score and the critic score perfectly matched.
yeah,
95.
They really, yeah. So
As soon as I saw it, I was like, wow, equal just like the Fremen.
Yep.
I go, yeah, that's what's great thing. So I wonder if we'll see Dune cosplays and other stuff come off of this movie.
That'd be cool.
I'd be shocked if we didn't.
Yeah.
But just as long as it makes still suits better than the ones in the miniseries.
Yep.
God,
That'd be funny. Like if someone might be a cool like cosplay to be like someone is like the Fremen from Lynch's Dune, then the mini series, and then the new Dune.
Yeah,
just to see like the
because
progression,
I think it just
or the
hurt,
progression, degression, and yeah.
it just hurt Derek to see them every time he saw them. The still suits.
Yeah, the pajama still suits. That kind of remind me of like a Green Goblin costume I had back when I was back in 2002 for the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies.
Mm-hmm. One thing's for sure, everybody who was in this is going to be major stars. Like Chalamet is going to be, and plus I think Dune 2 was lucky it came out when it did, because it was supposed to come out back in November, but then the strikes happened, and they thought they'd save it for because everybody was moving and pushing their stuff out. Warner Brothers saw all this free real estate.
Yeah, exactly, and said maybe this would be the better time. Yeah.
When Dune moved, it kind of gave it a mercy to like the likes of like. I'm not saying these movies are terrible, but I think definitely the Marvels and oh god, what else was it? That was in November.
What else was?
Oh yeah, Disney's Wish.
Wish.
It was kind of a mercy for those movies when Dune left.
And it allowed -1 to flourish too.
I leave you to your own devices.
Yeah. -1, and then -1 also came out in November. November was a very busy month, so it probably was Dune. It probably was in the best interest of those other movies that Dune moved its position. And I feel like with Dune, they kind of needed the actors a little bit more than like most other things because
Plus, it also would have been really weird to see Timothy Chalamet like back to back, right? He's like this like huge like mythic figure, and then suddenly turned into like this charming chocolatier.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I remember some people wanted to
like, what the hell?
I remember some people wanted to do a double feature between Dune Part 2 and Wonka. I don't remember what they were going to call it, but, basically it would be like Barbenheimer again, where they were going to be like, oh, we'll go see Dune Part 2 and, Wonka on the same day. But then when Dune moved release dates, people were like, oh, you ruined it.
It worked out in the end because Chalamet gets to go out on a high note with being this. This is going to make an impression on people.
Yep,
Austin
definitely.
Butler's going to get more from this. I'm pretty sure Zendaya is already on a huge rise, so this will just only add to her momentum. So yeah, Denis, I think they're gonna. If you hear his name attached to any project going forward, like sci-fi, you're gonna be like, "Oh, this is the guy who did Dune." Then you're gonna be like, "How's this gonna turn out?" It's like how Dark Knight gave Christopher Nolan a lot of cred. I think Dune 2 gave a lot of credit to Denis. I mean, I know Blade Runner was good, and so was Dune Part 1, but this is one people kept saying he's 3 for 3 with sci-fi films, and 4 for 4 with sci-fi films. That this is going to be, you'd be watching with interest if you see that his name is attached.
Exactly. This is the film he's going to be remembered for. This is the film that rises him to,
Yeah, if he doesn't if he doesn't mess up Messiah, I'm not saying he could, but I mean it could happen. But if he can make,
but we'll see. Yeah,
if he can make Messiah work, and he'll have a perfect trilogy, nothing seen since Peter Jackson back in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other thoughts from you guys?
No, I think we pretty much covered it.
Yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah, and I'm glad I got to see it with.
All for see.
Yeah.
I'll
Glad I got to see it.
Part
IMAX.
3 when it comes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I just gotta say, we had our smart fun. Now for our big dumb action with Godzilla and Kong beating each other up at the end of the month.
Hell yeah.
Also, Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire.
Right, that too. I still have to see Ghostbusters Afterlife. I feel a little ashamed of that, but yeah, I still got it.
It's really good.
It looks cute.
I heard, yeah.
It looked cute versus the other ones.
Yeah.
But this one looks like it's going to be... It's funny that both Ghostbusters and Godzilla have Empire in their title. Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire, and Godzilla and Kong, New Empire, a week apart.
Yeah.
All right.
The Empire Week, yeah.
Empire's becoming this big Hollywood word.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like Rise of. Remember when there was so many rises of?
Yeah. Dark Knight Rises, Rise of Planet of the Apes, what else was there? Yeah,
Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
Rise of the Lycans.
Yeah.
Anyway, so thank you guys for joining me on this. We really had a lot in this dense discussion of Dune, and I think the next big thing we might probably talk about would be Godzilla and Kong. In fact, I'm thinking about how, since I never put up our formal review from years ago, that we can just do another discussion of King Kong versus Godzilla, maybe right before Godzilla versus Kong, if you guys are open to that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, alrighty then. All right.
I'm still shocked that we never actually put that out there.
I still have it as an archive. I just gotta, export it.
Okay.
Alright then, well, you guys take care. Thank you very much. And to the rest of you all, good night.
You too.
And remember...
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and remember, guys...
Yeah. May that knife chip and shatter.
Yeah.
Alright, we'll catch you guys at the next one.